Swank. So since I stole all of Thorin's gigs, at the very least, what you guys can do is subscribe to his YouTube channel. So go on and do it right now.
Right, this is going to be another episode of Snake and Banter, the show I obviously do with Maui Snake, who, I mean, the joke is, we actually were just trolling when me and Yanko did that like intro where it was like, now that he took all my gigs, but like unironically, you didn't take my gigs, Maui Snake, because essentially it's always been a battle of me and myself as to whether I get gigs or not. But in lieu of me not being available, there's certainly plenty of gigs to be snatched up, so fair play. You take them, just take that money.
I take over the scraps, you know. I need to eat too. I need to feed my
family. Yeah. And plus, there's the thing, guys. I took my money from just low-level douchebags and scumbags. You're all now going to get a chance to take it from the greatest, most evil people to ever live. So,
well, it's like also that. It's like that Grim Reaper meme, you know, Duncan. You were the first door.
Yes.
Now I'm probably the second door, right? You
exactly.
know? Like, so
exactly.
It's just the circle of life, really, you know.
Exactly. But here's the thing: he doesn't realise. He's not going to be the last one coming down that Grim Reaper corridor because he's a man. So, by the way, spoiler, some very different demographics all coming down after that, mate, and you can't avoid that no matter what. So, enough said about that.
I check off some boxes, though.
You got a couple. But here's the thing, for now, you can just about cling on, but eventually understand, like, you will be done. So, obviously, people know the format of this show. We each come with the premise of a good, a bad, an ugly in the category, and we always make the guest start each topic out. So, Yanko, what did you pick as your good point?
Yeah, well, for me, the good point really was in light of Blast just being done. Even though it's online, it was a chance to see all the some of the tier 1 teams with the roster changes, like so Vitality, FaZe, G2, obviously a big one, right? OG as well with the in-game leader change. And for me, that was the good part, was actually how well all 4 of those teams performed, right? I think OG probably a bit of a positive surprise that they were, you know, in the top 3 in the tournament. Even the Vitality G2 game that G2 lost, and of course there were some, you know, some D sides weren't great and whatnot. You could still see like the level of CS was really high. So for me, that was good. I think also coming into this year, a lot of people have said it. I've said it on different shows as well. It's like the most exciting year, really, in terms of all the roster changes, because you look at a lot of these teams have just upgraded themselves. Like G2 obviously upgraded themselves, FaZe, even with the one change, but it's like a massive upgrade for them. With Rops, not only him being a great player, but just slots in perfectly 1-for-1 into the role instead of all of Meister. And then on the other side of things, you also have, you know, Vitality. For me, that's one of the question marks, how they're going to really do, you know, on LAN in the big games, only because of the communication, nothing else. But that's also a really cool like prospect that no one thought of until it happened, that mix could actually happen, right? Even the NA teams that obviously were out, you know, in last places, but still you could see some glimpses of, you know, good Counter-Strike from them, both Liquid and Evil Genius, as you know, Automatic, who has been away for a long time, was their best player. I mean, you can take that as a pro or as a con.
Sure.
I've always really liked him as a player, though, whether it was with the rifle or with the op, right? He always felt like one of those guys who has a pretty good game sense, right? He's also like psychologically, he doesn't really choke. Like he's always like kind of doing his thing. So that was one of the more painful ones when he switched to Valorant. But yeah, more than anything else, it was that like a lot of these teams have had a good showing, which is really important after you make changes. Even it doesn't even have to be a roster change, like change roles or something like that, to get like some good games, some good wins, to get so the players get some confidence, right? Like, you know, so it's not like, oh, they start losing straight away and like, oh, well, maybe this is actually not going to work. Imagine if Vitality like bombed out, right? And they're like, sure, oh shit, maybe we screwed this up, right? Mixing up and not staying with the same nationality roster, right? So I think it's a great sign for Katowice as well, which is going to be on LAN and hopefully with a crowd, that these teams are going to like be feeling good coming into the tournament.
By the way, I actually saw a mega... I'm not usually one for the memes, but this was like a legit one that actually did sort of cut through all the bullshit of the Matrix, as it were. So basically, there was a meme, right, where it's a 3-panel cartoon. First panel is a guy being sort of interviewed at a desk, and then the interviewer is asking him a question, you know, where they set you a task in an interview. The interviewer goes, would you describe this glass as half full or half empty? And it's obviously a glass with like half the water in. And then the guy just says, you might have seen this meme, the guy goes, I'd describe it as entirely full. And then it pulls back and the guy goes, you've got the job. And then he's working in the layers potato chip factory, because you know famously when you buy the pack of those crisps, like the bag's like that big, isn't it? But then when you open it, there's like that much at the bottom, and like that was actually whoever made that one. That's one of the rare memes that actually was legit. That cut through it all. Because I'm with you on that one. I think the fact automatic was the best on EG. Might not be the best sign for the rest, even though yes, for him it makes it look right. So come on, Mouse thing. What did you think? Yanko, actually, here's the thing. I thought initially he was only going to go with the top rosters, but it sounds like in general he's just happy with roster moves across the board and that we're getting to see these teams play out.
Well, yeah, with the moves, but I'm just going to say this, sorry to cut you off, because I want to ask you this as well. Maybe you know from your NA sources, right? I've talked to a couple of players, and I just couldn't I just couldn't know why are they keeping Cirque on that roster, right? I was like, just get anyone, and I'm talking to people, and everyone, like all the players have been telling me, yeah, he just needs to, like, when the team is good, like he still has it, right? I don't know if he's like everyone's best friend. Like you can tell he's like a likable guy, right? Obviously, but everyone has so much faith in him. So he has to start showing something soon. But everyone was still like, yeah, we're gonna keep him for sure.
Well, for the sake of EG right now, I think they're kind of an upside down team where the people that you wouldn't think should be performing as well are doing quite well. Like you look at Stewie's numbers, Rush's numbers, Automatic's numbers, they're the top 3 performers at Blast, and then you have Breeze and Cirque, who are supposed to be the guys that are on top of the scoreboard, and they're anything but. So I will say that it's cool that Automatic is in a state where it feels like he almost just hasn't dropped a beat since he left the game. It's like when I watched him play Big against Overpass on his default, I watched his POV, like he was making no mistakes. He wasn't going super aggressive. He wasn't overextending himself, but there were moments where Big tried to catch him off and he never got caught off. In fact, he got a couple kills in his default sort of positions, and it's why they were able to take a map away from Big. And I guess to broaden this out, to zoom out to the greater idea here that these teams, they made moves, they worked out. I don't know if it's a symptom completely that they all made the best possible moves for themselves, like OG getting Nexa, but at least they're finding themselves in a state of a honeymoon where it's paying off in the moment.
Yeah, by the way, this is also just, obviously just one tournament.
Oh, of course, the sample size.
Right? I'm not saying like, OG is going to be a top 5 lineup. Let's fucking go. But it's just that, I just know from when you're on a team, like, for example, in 2020, right, we had to play the fucking qualifier for Katowice. That's how grim things were at the time, right? So, but we played it, and we played really good CS. We beat everyone. It's not like the opposition was I don't know what. But, the boys were like, feeling better, like everyone felt good about the team. Then we had a short boot camp before Blast groups. We came there, we smashed everyone, and all of a sudden we're coming into Katowice. We're just having one role swap after the player break, and like we're a completely different team than before the break. So that small, like that thing can snowball basically on its own.
I also think if you look at these moves, another reason, obviously people were holding off for the major and the LAN season and people didn't want to like pull the trigger on any deals before then. But I also think if you look at it, in some ways, this is how you know we're sort of a bit out of the woods of the online era. Like there's going to be online tournaments, but there's going to be enough LANs regularly enough that you won't have to just only live and die on online. Because the moves now in this last off-season look so good because look at them, they're nearly all like real LAN moves. They're moves that have proven players. For me, one of the problems in the online era was even if you made moves, in the short term, you were incentivized to just get the online kid who hadn't done anything yet. But then you knew in the long run, how will that work out on LAN? So it meant that there was a lot of like either people didn't make moves for way too long or they made like essentially super questionable ones. Whereas these moves in this off season, with the exception of the ones where I essentially like sort of like Yanko saying, I just don't get the personal reason why like this EG team wanted to play together, for example. Like some of those players, I get why they do. Other ones, I'm like, you could have been in way better teams than this, mate. So aside from weird politically driven ones like that, all the other moves make sense pretty much. Like they're the sort of ones, if you went back in time before we went online to 2019, 2018, moves that happened back then nearly always were correct, as in for the level that the team's at and who's available, they usually take the right player, whether it's like the right role now or you have to work him in the team, whatever. But usually like there was very rare like crazy moves before we went online where it's like this is either going to fail completely or is it way better than everyone expected. No, usually it was like football, like you can't, the right teams and the right players get the right people at the end of the day. So I feel like normality's somewhat being returned, and in fact to tie into that, you look at the top 10 and the top 10 is going to be amazing. I won't say too much more because my good point basically will tie into this, so I won't bleed into that now. But along similar lines, because I notice all of our good points actually are in the same wheelhouse here. Mousestick, you may as well do your good point. Yeah, what was your good point? It's a specific roster you want to talk about, right?
Right. I wanted to talk about Vitality. I think that this is, in my eyes, my favorite move. I think Vitality of the new lineups is I think they're the best right now. I think they're the best team. I think they're better than FaZe. I think they're better than G2. And I actually think in 3 months they're gonna stay better than those rosters. I think the only way that G2 passes them is if m0NESY somehow just figures out a bunch of maps very quickly. So I'm super high on the Vitality roster. Their CT sides look devastating. Haka released a really nice little content video about how they play their CTs, and I noticed this too when I was watching them, that they're just never on their heels in a game. They're always doing something. They're always being proactive. They're always making the right maneuver, and that's showing because they're putting together these defenses that people just can't even break through. I think the biggest exception to me was when they faltered against G2 on Mirage in that kind of finals decider game. But other than that, I think their CT sides have been stellar, and I think that their T sides probably still have a bit of a ways to go. I thought that their entries were almost too clean for me. Like it almost was like Apex and dupreeh just kept getting headshots on some of their entry routes, which was just like, all right, well, that's just always going to win you around. But I'd like to see them tested a little bit more in the mid round. But man, I really think that this Vitality roster, I mean, I'll just say it now. I think my kind of bold pred for the upcoming majors, I think Vitality is just going to win the major. I think they are incredible. They have a very, very high ceiling with this team.
Wait a second, just before you go on there, why? It's one thing before you made the caveat like of the new rosters, you just boosted them past Na'Vi now. Like, well, how come they just suddenly got past them immediately like that? But right at the end of the whole paragraph as well, like at the end, he was like, oh, "By the way, like fucking Z were probably better than Simple Fox or something." Like, well, unpack the last part. Give us why are they better than Na'Vi in 6 months or whatever? Or I guess like 3 months now till the major, right? Something like that. Right?
2-3 months. It's kind of just that. I think that what I've seen from Astralis losing Zonic, if Vitality gain that for the future, right, then that's gonna just give them so much room to grow. I already think that they're flying pretty high, and I really think that they can seriously just ascend. I think that right now, like the teamwork between the players is so naturally cohesive already, and on top of that, the skill of the players is really high. I think Apex maybe overperformed as an individual at Blast, I will say, but I think that ZywOo could have potentially underperformed, and if normality is if we're returning to normality, then Vitality should just be a stronger team than what we even saw here.
Yeah, I don't know. Like for me, Vitality is a really interesting one because for me, I think it's pretty impossible for this roster to like flop. I think they're going to be top 5 no matter what. But I actually don't think they're going to be as successful as everyone expects them to be. I think it's going to be hard for them to win a tournament. Like what they have going for them, obviously, is the winning mentality that comes from not only the Danes but also like from the French. Really, like Apex has a great personality, great mentality, a great mind for Counter-Strike as well, right? So they have a lot of, and also I think both sides have experienced something bad, so to speak, that doesn't exist in this team. For example, Apex had to first with Misuta as a rookie, then with Kyojin, had to like micromanage them, constantly work with them, right? He doesn't have to micromanage, dupreeh and Magus, obviously very experienced players. And on the other side of things, for Astralis the last year or even more than a year, like all the roster issues, like departure of Device before that, players taking, time off and stuff. It's just been a roller coaster of a ride, and then having like stability and going from a, good org to arguably one of the best orgs in terms of how much they want to invest, what their mentality is. They also have an even better support structure than they had in Astralis in terms of all the performance coaching and all these things on the side that are, in my opinion, also very, very important to your success, right? But at the end of the day, you have 5 players who've never communicated in English in professional games, right? Like outside of IPL, really. And ZywOo, sure, he's been working, his English is better, but it sounds a little bit wonky even in interviews. Not to, like no one cares, like everyone can understand what he's saying. But when you're playing Counter-Strike, right, and shit's going down really fast, like it's not even about like he can make the call, like he will tell you, oh, the guy is here, or he's not gonna forget the name or something like that, but perhaps he wants to ask for a specific thing, right, that's a bit more complicated to describe, and either it's gonna take him a little bit longer or he's gonna like stutters. Like it's small things like that I've experienced in some of my teams, right, that are really kind of taking away from how good a player is. Like, you can have a great player with a great mind for the game, great to be like the secondary caller in mid-round to help you out, but if he can't like pronounce it, fast enough or explain it well enough, right, then it's really, he's not really playing up to his full potential. So
you had a line that you said in the interview I did with you, which is exactly on point here. That's why I'm bringing it up. You said in the interview one of the problems when people had to call in English if it wasn't their first language is I think you said it well. You said sometimes the right call, if it's like half a second late, becomes the wrong call.
Yeah, like a good call can become a terrible call if it's like 2 seconds late. You know, you want to ask for a flash, but you're looking at this, looking at that, like, and then by the time you get the flash, they're already kind of executing. You know, you want to flash outside B, right, on Inferno, for example. You can feel that they're doing an execute, but I mean that's also a simple call. It's kind of hard to fuck something like that up. But that's kind of the example, right? If you're too late and they're flashing you and you're just dead and the round falls apart because your teammate is on a flash, they can read the setup and that's just it, right? It's that easy. So that for me is the question mark, really. And also, all things considered, still they played like 8 maps. A lot of it was best of ones. Like all these teams, that's where I agree with you, Duncan. Like, you know, a team like Na'Vi, even Gambit and Heroic, right, the 3 of the best teams that haven't made roster changes, they have established map pools and they have depth. I have no doubt that Vitality is already great on like 2-3 maps. Sure. But what happens if someone picks a map against them that they're not great at, right? Like best of 3s is where it's at. This format, I think it was fine for Blast for like the opening tournament, but I don't want to see best of ones anymore. Like the teams are too good, the players are too good that you're just like not kind of, you're not making it fair for them really in a way as well to see who the better team is. So that's why actually, I think your prediction is bold and mine is also bold that they're not going to be, I think they're going to be kind of where they were with the old lineup, right? Like might win a tournament more or something like that, but that they're going to break out and be like top 1 and win like 2 out of 4 tournaments maybe. I don't think that's going to happen for them, at least not until like maybe the second part of the year or maybe not until next year.
I think I'm in the similar camp to Yanko here because I actually think this is one of the most interesting roster constructions I've ever seen in Vitality. Because on the one hand, right, if I go pure Football Manager and I don't ask like the expectations of the players and whether they're on the career, if you just look at the roster they've made on paper, it does almost seem like Yanko said, it can't flop. Like as in, even if it totally fails for what I would consider as possible, it'd probably still be like the 6th best team in Counter-Strike. Like it's hard to be much worse because for starting, like ZywOo would have to get worse. These players would have to have nothing to contribute at all. So I don't think that can happen. But this is what's interesting. That ain't the stakes most of the players in this team are playing for right now. Legitimately, everyone except Masuta is here to win everything. They're here for what Mousenake's talking about, to win the major. Like if you're Apex, by the way, and you have the team you just had and you were winning lands and competitive with Na'Vi, you're only here to win. If you're ZywOo, you've been the number 1 player in the world, you're only here to win. If you're Magisk and dupreeh, you didn't join this team just for the money. You could have stayed in Astralis and got the bag and been in like an average team. You came here to win as well. And by the way, a pretty challenging new approach. You have to go and speak a different language, interact with people who themselves aren't first language. There's all sorts of challenges you've taken there. So I would just say that. It's like, as a fan, it's easy to go, well, I like these players, so even if they're the 3rd best team, that's cool. I don't think that's enough for these players. So in my opinion, the gamble with Vitality was, this is the world beat, and this is the team that beats Na'Vi. We're going to make a dynasty, basically.
And also, another thing on top of that is, obviously, ZywOo is ZywOo, right? But would you put a player on the rest 4 of Vitality on a level same or like really, really close to a player like Electronic?
Not at this point in time. No.
Either Misuta is like the younger guy is gonna like elevate his game to that point. Like Magisk, of course, has had like really good tournaments. He was MVP, right, of Katowice Major 2020, right? Like he's had flashes here and there at the tournament, but that's been kind of inconsistent, right? And also in this lineup that's mixed now, can he do that, right? So that's also where I say their floor is pretty high, but their ceiling is also not as high as some of the other lineups.
And then another thing to me that I think is a little bit overlooked is, I won't say this just because of examples like Cloud9, etc., but I do think the biggest risk in Counter-Strike is making essentially a totally new lineup. It's one thing if you take a core and you add, like G2, they just took a core and put some pieces in and out, and they kept some elements fundamentally the same. You could say they kept 3 players in Vitality, but like Masuta wasn't the fucking core of that team. Like, let's be real. Like, so yeah, Apex and ZywOo stay, right? But then you've got Magisk and dupreeh come in with their coach. So it's like, to me, even the identity of like, well, what team do they become? What is the core? How do they integrate? These are all questions essentially that are rhetorical. They have to answer them themselves, and there isn't an obvious answer to me. Like, you have to figure it out. Like, there's even an element, I think, where the scope of the players they've put together in this team mean that you actually could have some big fundamental issues figuring out how you want to do things. So I'm sure you come from totally different camps of play and philosophy. There's no connection between the French and Danish scene, is there? And then the last thing I would say is this. Is one thing I think they've actually accidentally done, they haven't done this intentionally or anything, is they have essentially managed to get a very good roster in terms of like what each player represents. They've got like 2 really young players, Masuta and Ziwu. They've got like older players in people like Dupree and Apex. Then you've got Dupree and Apex are probably the 2 most decorated entry players in the history of Counter-Strike. But then you've got someone like Negus, who's a really good fucking lurk player, and now if anything is moulding himself to become like a secondary IG. Like the actual team looks fucking mega. It's why I say the only one person who should really be nervous about this lineup is Masuta, because it's like, mate, here's the downside for you. If the team doesn't work for the rest of them, that's cool. They just change you and then they try again. Your problem is if this lineup doesn't work, you get changed. Like, by the way, even if you're good, maybe, like, that's just unfortunately the nature of the world we live in. Like, they're not signing Megis to tell him to fuck off 3 months from now. It's you no matter what, isn't it? So in this scenario, like, again, I think generally, like, I thought the first out was pretty good. I don't think you could have expected much more than that. I think people, they're kind of naive when they think that really you're just going to have a team that just wins from day one if it's mega. Like, for a best of one tournament with all those different setups, and obviously no one knew who they were playing in the second bracket phase when you had all those different matchups from across the groups. Like, I thought it was totally fine how they performed. It was pretty good in general. So this actually leads into what my point is, which actually ties together a lot of what we're talking about here. Because I was obviously thinking of a different angle, something someone won't bring up as a point. This is what I think's cool. Is, remember the whole discussion as soon as Na'Vi won the major was, is this going to be their era? Like, what would their era look like? How many tournaments should they win? All the rest of it. Well, one of the problems anytime you have the era discussion is the first thing anyone says who thinks that your team's overrated is they attack the strength of the era. They just go like, oh, well, you know, like put it this way, it's one of the reasons why even if Liquid had won that major, there would have some people would have said, yeah, but Astralis took time off, and you know, like Vitality and Ents were new teams, and we'll just go like there's plenty of things you could attack. Same as when, by the way, when Astralis was becoming the best in 2018, people like, well, FaZe Clan didn't have Olaf Meister, and everyone says Electronic is having his problems in Na'Vi, but they're number 3. So yeah, everything. There was a million angles you could go with, right? So to me, the best news of all this offseason is if you're Na'Vi, if you really do dominate the next 3 to 5 months, there's not even going to be any question, mate. Like, they've all, literally everyone's got help. They've all your rivals have got the big help coming in, like literally fucking cavalry coming over the hill. Loads of even lower teams have made big upgrades that look fucking good. You even have the sleeper teams like VP look even better. Like, I think this could be one of the most fire top 10s of all time. And the thing is, if Na'Vi really has the era now, it's going to be one of the best eras ever. Like, yeah, you want, like, as much as I bag on like Boomich as an IGL, he must be doing something if they dominate in this era. I'll have to give him the props, you know.
I think right now I would already say that this is the Na'Vi era. It's just that it's not a dynasty. We're not quite to the point where it's, and I think that's kind of a term that I want to bring more to the like CS space, because it always feels like we have to say eras for some reason or another. But an era can be shorter. It's fine. And I guess when you say the strength of it, like Astralis had a dynasty, and I would probably say there was kind of a Swedish dynasty early on in the game. But other than that, I would like. Right now, for me, Na'Vi are in a position where if they do actually kind of bounce back off of what felt like a really slow start to those, you know, those BO1s, Why
are you saying real talk? Why are you saying if as though like, you know, I don't want to put myself out there, but if they can bounce back from those BO1 losses,
yeah,
you know, like, why are you actually out on Na'Vi now, low key? Have you just not admitted it, but you're secretly out on them, you're waiting for them to fall or something?
I think that I'll say this for the major and for some of the tournaments that they won, I'd say that Perfecto and Boomich probably overperformed.
Certainly, yeah.
So I think that it's going to be up to the, you know, Electronic, Simple, and Bit to just try to carry that over. And it does kind of feel like Bit has never, like, I don't know when he's going to finally falter, but it has, like, people have to begin anti-stratting him a little harder.
He can't keep getting away with it forever, come on. Like, you can't just do like 15 tournaments in a row or something.
Exactly. So there's going to be some, eventually he's going to hit a wall. I don't know if they've already pre-planned for what people are going to do to try to counter Bits play in the future. It doesn't seem like anybody can counter Simple for that matter, but honestly, I really think that for some reason, kind of at the end of the year, there were a few of those caveats where you would say like, oh, this like NIP wasn't really a complete roster.
For sure.
G2 was still looking to the future for picking up m0NESY. Yeah. So the thing is that Navi, I would never put an asterisk by what Navi did in the latter half of 2021 by any means, but I would say that what they're up against now is going to be tougher, and I think we might already be seeing just little more cracks. It's not completely busted open yet, though.
I think though it's really important that they managed, to make the spring finals right now from the groups. I don't think, obviously they're not going to be satisfied with the fact that they even lost, some best of ones, or especially they lost the best of 3 to NIP, right? I mean,
sure.
not playing with Device as well. So on the other side of things, they were boot camping right before Blast, boot camp for Blast, and stayed in the boot camp for Katowice. So they're really going to be, committed, and they're going to put in a lot of work to kind of see, okay, maybe they'll get even glimpses of what people were going to do against them. You also have to remember, like, people had all the information on them, so to speak. Even if you look at the basic stuff like positions and so on, they're playing against teams who are new, and that's always annoying at the start, right? Because you don't know who's going to be where, you don't know if they're going to try and mind game you, right? So I think for Navi they did the important part, but I do agree the problem is, again, if they, for example, somehow don't make the playoffs at Katowice, right? Like that would be obviously a really bad result for them and very disappointing. And that's when, if the doubt starts creeping in a little bit into the players' heads, right? If they lose to a team, if Vitality knocks them out for a spot in the playoffs, or G2, right? Or are these teams really, like, did they really get so much better that now immediately, when after 2 months, we're going to have some struggles against them? So that's why, like, there's so many cool storylines and options. But I agree with your point for sure. Like, if they somehow stay dominant and like win the next 2 out of the 3 big lands or something like that, and really, like, with the level of opposition that they have, that's going to be super impressive.
Absolutely. Right, go on then. We'll move to the next category, which is obviously the bad. So, Yanko, what was your point? By the way, spoiler, this is like a topic that every podcast talk about a million times. But let's see what angle Yanko's going to take. So, what is your bad point?
Yeah, my bad point has been, like, Astralis the last few months, really. And I'll have a small one to add to that, considering now Snake is here as well, but that's fine. But to talk about Astralis at first, right, it's like, it really does feel like people always, there's a lot of speculation, but I don't give a fuck. It's like, we're here on the show, like, we can speculate. I'm not on the broadcast, right?
It's fine.
So why would you ever, when you're making, like, the change, you're bringing Blame F and Config, right, and you have Lucky, and you're not letting him up? Like, what's the reasonable explanation for that? Like, he's a young player, obviously inexperienced. What does he need? Well, he needs fucking experience. So at the start of that, at the end of last year, really, like, it's the second part of the season, it's like, just let them play with the op. Like, even if you suck, right?
Yanko, didn't you read it? Didn't you read the report, the interview? He said he came up with the idea. That's what he said.
Yeah.
I'm just kidding, dude. That was total BS. That was total...
with a gun in his head, right?
Yeah.
So it's like, that doesn't make any sense, especially because the other guys are not, like, oppers, it's not like you have a Device on the team who doesn't want to op anymore, some dumb shit like that. So you're doing that. There's the reason that comes to your mind first is, well, he's not going to be on the team for much longer. We might have a bit higher chance of winning some games this way, right? Let's try to do that because of, like, points, ranking, whatnot, all that shit matters, right? And then now things change. Like, he's back on the op, right? I think they realized what Vitality realized with Kyojin. He's, like, too inexperienced. He's going to need too much time. He's not a Brocky. He's not a Bit. Right, he's not someone who is going to be good enough relatively soon that we're not going to be losing games because of him, right? Because if you're Astralis, like, you just pull the plug and say, okay, put it back to Astralis talent. He needs like a year or 2 more to develop. Get Farlig, who's a little bit more experienced, a little bit better. He's still not Device, right? Or you were just trying, like, to kind of find a way to bring back Device, which actually does make the most sense out of everything when you see how that roster was being handled. And when you look at the lineup with Device on the team, it's like fucking great, right? Like, that would make the most sense. So just how Astralis, not only that lineup, but even all the stuff like going back to when Device left, also kind of not finding a way to keep him on the roster and like kind of make that team work, right? Like even if you have to give them all a break for 2 or 3 months, I think, I don't know who it was who was talking about it. Maybe even Device himself in the Blast documentary, right? He was saying like, yeah, when Zipex and Glaive took that break, like it really hurt the team, right? Because, you know, we were just playing with stand-ins. It wasn't fun. Maybe we should have all, I think he said something, maybe we should have all taken a break just for a couple of months, right? So I think you look at just how epic that lineup was and that organization was and the achievements that they had and the mismanagement and kind of where they are, right? I mean, they're losing. Their win rate is like something atrocious, like 30% or something they're losing to, and they're not even making it close. Like, and they're just taking turns who's going to have like 3 kills per map. Like Glaive has 2 awful maps, then suddenly he has finally a good map, then Zipex has 4 kills. Like these are crucial players, right? Like they're not going to frag the most, but they play crucial positions where you maybe can get 1 kill or 2 kills per round, right? They're going to turn the tide of the round, and you just can't have that happening. And they've never had I feel like as long of a period where they're being like kind of having so many bad games. I don't think even you can contribute to it being online or this or that, right? I just think that there's fundamental issues within that team, perhaps even with the way you're approaching the game, right? Maybe there's some clashes there, right? In that sense, so that, you know, and you could tell Glaive, I give props to him for that. He was really honest in the interviews that he was doing, like in the loser interviews. He's just saying like, yeah, like things are not great. We're trying to figure it out, but we're struggling, and you know, we just have to find a way to make it happen, right? And but in reality, even the eye test and everything, it's just not looking great for Astralis right now.
I actually think that my kind of hot take on Astralis is that I think Lucky is becoming the scapegoat for this team in what is a more structural problem for how they play beyond that. I really think that their T sides just have almost like 2 conflating ideas going on simultaneously, where you see Config sometimes just kind of going out for fights and it doesn't always feel like he has the most support. You see BlameF kind of just getting into some really weird position on the map somewhere, and all at the same time, it never feels like they know how they want to convert around or positioning it around, where the old Astralis, you would never even second guess that. You'd see a 2-2 split on Nuke from from whatever angles they take over. But nowadays, it's kind of like, oh, they lost so much control on the map, but BlameF had his little spot that the other person that survived from his default spot just joined up with BlameF, and then BlameF just baits that guy. Like, it's really just kind of hard to watch them play late rounds out. I'll say that what I noticed before when I was watching Lucky's demos early on was that T-side, he would try to even bait Zipnix. Now he's running in a little bit more. I'm happy about that, but he's not very good at it. So I really don't think that this team has, like, there's not a lot of ways that I can see this working with even just a Lucky swap. I really think that you need to get rid of, like, this is the more drastic one, would be probably get rid of BlameF and Lucky, or I think this is more reasonable for recent performance, is get rid of Zipnix and get rid of Lucky.
Now,
like,
obviously,
just like handed in what, like a 3-year contract.
I know. The problem with that is, I agree. Obviously, if we're doing Football Manager mode, yeah, but just the reality of that contract means that's obviously not the option, is it?
Right. Yeah.
Sadly.
Yeah. I mean, that's that. I mean, I'm just saying that would be. Yeah, you need to switch. You need to switch multiple things though right now, because I think that on their T side, the initiative takers are Glaive and Config, but then you have like almost 3 guys who want to be the last man alive closer, and I think that's, like, we saw what happened with Complexity when they had JKS and Coldzera and BlameF. Like, it's the same thing is happening again.
Sure. This was so hard to watch, but I'll give you, Duncan, I'll give you the little like extra asterisk for this topic, right? Another bad one is Maui Snake's take that Big is going to be a top 5 team.
Do you know what I find weird about that?
You know, but he's like, I don't know if he's like half German or what, but look at the teams we already talked about.
No, I know exactly, yeah.
We talked about Navi, Vitality, G2,
exactly.
FaZe. So if you're going to be top 5, Big has to be like after those 4 teams.
Okay.
So
that's actually my take, by the way.
They have to be better than VP. They have to be better than, well, OG.
Everyone, and Gambit. There's a million teams, man.
Gambit and everyone.
Yeah, exactly.
They have to be better than them, right? It's like
the joke I have is this. if anything, it's not even that I need you to tell me why Big's going to be. It's why are they going to be better than like 8 of those teams? That's my problem most things. Like, I get the premise. Like, here's the thing: if you just mean they should be better than they look now, and they should be way better, appropriate to the level of Big last year, I'm with you. But like, I don't even get where the angle is. How is the angle that they could be top 5 though? What am we missing here?
So the angle to open this one up and kind of clarify my point on it is that I think that they will touch the top 5 ranking on HLTV.
Just like 1-7. Right, okay. This has already become so tenuous. I know. Yeah. Come on, all right.
But I also do think that
okay.
you can look at a couple of the lineups that are ahead of them right now, and I think there's potential for drop off. I think that there's Entropic that should fall. They should fall. Heroic has been a
That's
weirdly
not impossible.
Yeah, I think they've been weirdly shaky too. Astralis, that they should fall too. NIP should fall. I think then you kind of actually start getting into top 7 territory with them, and it's like, can they beat anybody in that position, or can they beat FaZe? And I think that's when it gets a little bit dicey. But that's why I say, like, they can touch the top 5, because you just need one BO3 victory over one of these teams and knock them out early of a tournament. You get a couple more points, and that's just how the HLTV ranking works. But I actually think that they're solid enough to do that. They're going to put themselves in enough positions with their partner statuses to do it.
They can touch the top 5 by tickling their balls while the top 5 are skull fucking them.
There you go. Okay. Well, there we go. Let's leave it at that. I think he summarised it very well. Right. Well, this then, because here's what I would say about the Astralis angle. Right. My main problem is this. Obviously, we've known they've had Lucky in the team for ages at this point in time. It's been months and months and months and months. Remember, it was before obviously the whole thing with Bobski and the qualification. They've had Lucky in for ages now. So my problem is this. I've just been watching the way the other Astralis members talk about Lucky and seem to behave. And this is what doesn't add up, dude. Is I'm almost with you on the angle of like, this almost looks as though they were just preparing the team so that Device could just walk back in at the end of last year, and then everything. It was like, we didn't give him all the, like, we just kept, we got everyone else comfortable, and they're all comfortable. Right, you could come in now, because it doesn't make sense. Like, think about this, right? Think about the 2 main people in Astralis who went out of their way publicly to defend Lucky. It was dupreeh and Zonic, who already knew they were leaving the team. By the way, spoiler, even at the time they made those statements publicly, when he was their teammate, they were already having all the negotiations with the other teams. It was already known, essentially. It just depends which team they go to, but they're going to be going from Astralis. That's what I'd already heard. So that's very suspicious that no one in the team ever seems to big him up. If you ever noticed, right, the only time they mention Lucky is when people directly ask them in interviews just to bring his name up. Like, it'd be awkward not to say anything at that point in time. And then what they do is they just do the whole, like, he is good, or like, he's a young guy, or like, it's all the whack. Well, here's the problem, right? If you actually really do buy into it, as in, let's say you imagine someone like Glaive, you'd hope they at least included him in the plans of what they wanted to do, right? Oh yeah, we're going to sign you and Xyp9x, like, we're not certain on the others yet, but we might end up saying with Lucky, maybe he'll develop, right? You'd at least figure he must be in the plans. Well, my problem is this: I don't get the vibe that people like Glaive actually necessarily, I've never even got any impression from him at all he thinks he's a good player, or that there's any talent there. And this is why it's weird. I'll give you the example. When Yanko in FaZe Clan, they had to bring in Brokey completely out of nowhere, just out of FPL, they never shut the fuck up for like 6 months talking about him. Every interview, people would bring him up and be, and he's actually, watch what this guy's doing, and he's quite going to impress people. Because obviously, remember, the whole premise was people thought, right, he's going to come in and he's going to be like BMAS, he'll be there for like a month, and then you'll replace him with someone else. But like, and so the team was essentially prepping everyone for like, no, this guy's just going to be in our team from now on. They don't even seem to do that with Lucky, dude. I don't even buy that the players sort of are on board with this, because they don't have like that unified mentality you normally do, where you defend the guy that we all think should be cut.
Yeah, I think the problem is like when I first saw him in Pro League, right? Like, he's not blowing your mind, but he's good. Like, he's like doing the correct things. Like, he was hitting a good percentage of his shots, right? And you could tell that in some time he could get really good, and then LAN comes in, he falls off a little bit. But yeah, he's not like mine, but he's not a m0NESY, right? Which is why you were struggling to understand the move, because both Astralis and G2, at least on paper, have the same rest of the team where they have to win now. Like, they don't have time to develop a player. So you do have to, like, maybe take a shot with a player like m0NESY, right? Because there's not too many players that you can get, and his ceiling is so high that you're feeling like taking that gamble, right? Like, if he is 70% of what we expect him to be, right? Like, then that's good enough for us to win. And that's why it was strange for Astralis, because, Lucky wasn't that sort of a player. He wasn't bad, but he wasn't anything where you're looking at it and like, oh yeah, this guy can be like really, really insane. Like he's showing flashes here and there. He was just like solid, and fell off a little bit and got a little bit better. So that's why like it was kind of strange.
And then I would just say on this lineup in general, like probably the most underwhelming thing about this team is if you covered the nameplates, I would never even know Glaive was on this team, mate. Like what about the way they play looks like a Glaive Counter-Strike team? Like this is the part of the issue. He doesn't have the pieces to do anything with, as far as I can tell. Like he's got like essentially this is like if you had someone who before this had every tool in the arsenal. Now he has just an axe. That's it. He has an axe. If the axe works, the axe works. He can't be doing any like fencing techniques or some sort of advanced shit. Like he can't do like guerrilla running type. You just has an axe. He has to swing it at you, and if he can hit you, he can hit you. Because at the moment, Config's fucking terrible. And not always in terms of impact. That he does. You see in the game he's doing stuff, but he can't carry the game right now. And so all it is just blame F. They're not. Here's the thing: blame F's style in necessitates you're always going to get some empty kills. But like at least he's fragging. At least he's doing that. So I think the team's a total mess, mate. I don't know why anyone has it. Like, I don't even really see people defend him anymore, mate. Is there any analysts in the world that actually trying to, like, bring this team up? Seems like everyone's just awkwardly trying to not talk about him if they don't like him, you know.
But, you said, like, Config is a big one for me because there was people out there, like, who were saying, oh, yeah, this is the most skilled Danish player
for
like,
sure.
In my mind, right? And I'm like, well, where's that been? Like, yeah, he has a good tournament every 4 or 5 tournaments. And even though, and then someone will say, yeah, but he's very aggressive. He's not going to have that great stats. Well, I mean... Hey, Nico is a bad example, but Yekinder is an aggressive player who's like really consistent, right? Like I don't put Config, I don't want to say like anywhere near, but for me, Yekinder is the better, more consistent player who's doing more for his team and has been doing for a while now, right? Like you have a lot of those players like on different teams where it's like, I mean, you guys are putting it, he's like a top 5 rifler in the world, right? Like I'm really not seeing that, and also. Consistency is key. Like, I don't care if you have 35 kills one game, if you're going to have 7 kills the next game. Like, I can't win like that. Like, you have to be able to do it more often.
One last thing I would say as well as this, because I can actually tell you, I literally told Configs himself this exact piece of advice. And here's the sad news. He initially took my advice and I believe did turn down the initial offer, but obviously in the end he took the offer. My advice went like this. I said, look, mate, I get, especially for him, because obviously famously he did have that offer to Astralis. He didn't take it. And like, everyone goes like Kirby, I bet Kirby regrets not staying. Even Kirby knows he wouldn't have won all that. The difference is if you're Config, you do go, fuck, maybe I could have done sort of like what Magus did, but in Master, and maybe we would have won. So he's the one who really thinks like I should have just fucking said something different in that interview 3 years ago. So the problem is, I told him this. I said that the problem is, though, mate, don't use that as your reason to join the team now, because you're going to think you're rewinding the clock and you're getting to play in Astralis. And I was like, but you won't. It's not. You're not going to be in that Astralis though. You're going to be in this Astralis. And I even told him at the time, dude, be careful which Astralis players stay. And obviously, I meant at least keep like fucking one of Device and Dupree. Like you got to have Ziggler. I never meant keep Glaive and then Zipnix was just like. Got this giant bag of money, guys. That's what all you got at this point in time. Like, you're not in Astralis, dude. You're in some whack team called Astralis 4 years later.
Well, a big part of that is you did mention all the players, but Zonic is a massive part of that. You could you could see how like emotional Apex was when they played their last game. Like he was losing. Like the one coach that can replace Extaz, who for me is an awesome coach, is arguably just Zonic, right? So they got the one guy who could do it. And who did Glaive get? Like, he got A, which I don't think we have enough information as of right now to really judge him whether he's good or not good, right? Like, obviously, it's impossible to fill Zonic's shoes, the same as it was impossible to fill Device's shoes. So, I agree with you 100%. Like, you didn't join the Astralis. You joined the Astralis org, but the lay of the land is way, way different than what you would have hoped for.
Config's going through that thing where you have a crush on a girl like 10 years ago, and then like she gets really fat, but you still kind of like hold on to the idea that she was once hot, and if I can have her that one time, it might be good. But then you realize like she's even had like more trauma since that time too, and she's just awful. So that's
basically Config's trying to pick up the girl he didn't have the guts to talk to in high school, but she's just a waffle waitress now with 4 kids. And the joke is, Config, you could do better now, mate. You've actually got like that little gig at the dealership going. Just meet a normal girl, mate. You don't need to just let it go. She's done. Zipnix is washed, mate. She's busted. Yeah. There's no Botox that can save Zipnix. I'll tell you that right now. So it's okay. Let's right, Maui Snake. What is your? Here's the thing. I know yours is pretty fucking wide open. So you're gonna have to give me the angle of this. But I think it's gonna be a popular sentiment. What is your bad point, Maui Snake?
Yeah, I thought this Blast format was pretty bad. I mean, Yanko, you already kind of touched on the fact that you don't really want to watch these teams play BO1s. I actually almost can say that the BO1s were okay. It's just that even the way it was structured, like it didn't even make sense kind of like in terms of bracketology, like so it's supposed to be a double elim group stage bracket to open the first day, right? Well, the thing with a double elim bracket is that you get 2 lives. So what is the advantage for getting through the upper part of this bracket and being a team like Vitality, beating FaZe the first time, and then you have to meet FaZe again, and then you lose to them because now FaZe can adjust their game plan? There's no advantage. So that's a flaw in how this bracket is constructed already. And on top of that, it's just that teams had too many lives in weird ways. Like Note brought it up on its server time. There's just the fact that Navi went 2-3 in this whole thing, and they were able to qualify. Like that's bogus, because OG went 4-0. Why does one team that goes 4-0 in this kind of thing and one team that goes 2-3 end up with the same fate? That just means there's a flaw in how this whole format is made. I personally just knew that after I watched the first day, just to like get myself hyped for Tier 1 Counter-Strike again, I was kind of like, oh yeah, this shit just doesn't even matter. So I kind of just waited. I just kind of held off on grinding it. Also, the days were just the first couple days were so long, because it's like 6 BO1s back to back to back, and they have to have like these 15-minute breaks between the games, and then they had to fill for so much time. They were even just playing different content pieces on top of it. And it's okay. Props to Blast for making some more content pieces that were fun and good, and especially that documentary. But like this format, it almost forced them to just kind of bust those out.
Yeah, I don't know. For me, it was, again, not just the best of ones, but also I agree with you 100%. Like the fact that teams had so many lives, it's just like it takes away from the games, really, right? Because even someone like Navi, yeah, exactly, right? To some of the results of the most. And I looked at it, I was like, okay, the groups are basically just proceeding, and then you have the bracket, and that's it. And then I see this like fucking last chance stage. I'm like, wait, what the fuck is this? So basically, the only thing you just need to win 1 best of 3 to qualify, right? Like, or if you're last in the groups, then you have to win 2, right? But if you win a couple of best of 1s, then after that you just need to win 1 best of 3 and you're through. You can lose like whichever one, and then there's the last chance, and then you're through. Which for me is just like, well, you're taking then all the wins you got in the best of 1s even don't matter that much for the teams who won. It's almost like you're getting punished for winning, like you said, like punished for winning all of the games. So in that sense,
even like to spin off that, like FaZe lost one of the BO1s, but then they won more BO1s that they had opportunities with later. It just like it put them in such a weird position.
I'll tell you the first time they did the format from last year, from the last 2 years, right? When they presented it to us at the meeting before it was public, they had that weird last game because they needed one more game. Right? And I was like, wait, because they were just going through shit. I was like, wait, go back to the other slide. What the fuck is this F2 game? It's like, so I beat this team, and they can still come in and beat me and take the #1 seed, like, for the tournament. And they were like, yeah, well, it's the upper bracket game. It's also for... So I told them, listen, okay, I understand. You need to have, like, an extra game. It's bullshit, like, that I have to beat the other best team in the group twice, right? Like, so at least make it, like, 85K for first place, 15K for the second place, and don't give anything for, like, because I think we should stop giving money to last place teams.
Great.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So it's like, at least put some money on it so it has more weight, because it's hard to, like, kind of look at the other. And I think that format was fine in the best of 3s. Now, I don't know, like, some people were speculating it, if this format was just for this one group, because there were so many new teams. If that's the case, I can swallow it, right? Like, if they go back to the old format. But if this is how it's going to be from now on, imagine 6 months from now, all these teams are established and you're making them play best of 1s against each other. It's going to suck.
The problem I have is this, my own bias naturally, like me and Lopez are just honest and like everyone else. We don't pretend like I just said, I just want it to be WWE. Like essentially if it was my tournament, I would just say Navi's already in the quarterfinals. The rest of you have to play the tournament. Like because I just don't want to have a tournament where they're not in the land finals. It's pointless for me. So essentially, I'm cool with this format, Mousestick, just because it was almost functionally impossible for all the really good teams to not get through. So on the one hand, I'm biased. I like that. But if I actually look at the format, I do think it's total ass. Like, basically, it is silly, I think, to do the whole thing where it's like, we played it out for seeding. It's like, why do we need seeding in that particular way? Like, haven't we already cracked it? Either use the HLTV top X, like, we're only going to slightly disagree about the placings. Or, if you want to do the other approach, I think IEM cracked this years ago. You just have the teams do it themselves.
Yes,
like,
that's the best.
they're never going to be a million miles off, are they? They're not going to put, like, fucking Virtus Pro, the number one team in the world, are they? Like, they're going to have it, again, a 1 or 2 placings off. So to me, why did you have to play all those other matches? Now, again, you have to remember, these TOs are never going to admit this, especially the online component. The more games, the better for them. Just more hours on fucking stream, innit? So, sadly, there's probably some of that as well. But I personally, like, I'm going to be real with you, I thought the format last year was very good. Like, I like the fact that going into the group, I know exactly the 4 teams. Crucially, they know all the other teams in the group. You prep for it like it's a real LAN. You fucking know all the opponents you're going to play. It's all best of 3s, so you get the proper veto. You get the right maps that they play on. Like, I actually thought the last format last year was fine as it was, so I don't really know why they've done this. Like, if I had to guess, but maybe again could be a complaint from the partner teams. The big teams want better chances to get through, etc. They don't want to get into a bad group or whatever. I don't know what the reasons could be.
Well, I think that the teams, if the teams came up with this format or helped contribute to it, the conspiracy is that they're all just giving themselves more opportunities to get HLTV points from each other.
It's convenient that none of them complained about it, put that way. If you noticed that, like, there wasn't many players complaining about this format, which normally, if they have nothing to do with it, they'll be pretty quick to tweet that shit.
If you're a team like MIBR here, you're just so happy that you were able to play a BO1 against the best team in the world, and now your HLTV ranking is going to shoot up because you took a ton of points from that. And for teams that
they played 9 maps for fuck's sake in this tournament, even though they didn't make it.
Yeah, so you get tons of opportunities to, one, get official practice, which is nice, but 2, you get to inflate your HLTV ranking points, because you get to just, if you get 1 win, even if you're losing everything, then you're gonna boost your overall score. So that's kind of where I think it is, and I think it's why the teams probably are fine with this, or maybe they even came up with it.
Well, not to mention the fucking nightmare of having to watch 6 Infernos in a row, or however the fuck it was. And
oh my god!
I agree with Duncan. Like the previous format is like true double elimination. This is some weird fucking triple elimination almost for some of the teams. It's like a triple elimination tournament. It's like it's true. The players are always looking for formats where they can fuck up and still not be out.
It's quadruple elimination for Navi, because they hit 3 elims. They hit 3 elims and they didn't even get out still. So it's 4. They had 4 lives. Apparently.
And that case I know came up with it. It was obviously NIP after their experiences last year. Anonymous, shout out. All I'm going to say is they did have 3 lives in that tournament, so even though everyone else got 2, so fucking IP. Right, what about this then? So let me think. Yeah, we'll just move on, right? Here's my point for the bad. I agree, but I think that's a bad one in general. I haven't heard anyone defend it or say something in favour of it. Basically, mine was the only one, which is it's impossible for Na'Vi not to get through. My bad point is this, and it's going to be a little bit subtle because people are probably going to think like, that's a bit of a bold way to say it, but spoiler, I know this person, I have inside information you don't. Essentially, even though there's been no big fanfare, there hasn't been a big announcement, no one's retired or anything, if you just look at the lay of the land in casting right now, Semler effectively has been forced out of CSGO and probably won't be returning at this point in time. Blast was one of the last tournaments he did. He did a little bit of WePlay, but seems he got replaced on that or didn't get the gig again last year. There is no Flashpoint anymore. I mean, what's left? He didn't work with ESL anyway. I guess in theory he could have done the major. I'll leave him to comment on that himself. No one knows technically who is working the major. So basically, as far as I can tell, this might just be the end of Semler, the commentator, the broadcast personality. He can do other things in the community, of course. He can come on talk shows. He can still do other things. But I get the vibe that this is the end. And the reason why, for me, that's bad is I still thought he was good at the end. I wouldn't say he was the best. By the way, I always kept it real with Semler. I never told Semler to his face he was the best. I even told him, look, you're my mate, but I actually think Sadik is better. Like, it's not about personality here, mate. It's about who's the best at the job. So, but I did think, especially his duo with Anders, they were one of the best of all time. They had a very unique personality pairing. They were obviously fabulous at what they did. They were super. The way they bounced off each other was great. And I still thought he had a place within the community. I still thought he was a classic pairing. I enjoyed hearing, I never really got why people like Reddit was, aside from the obvious nutters, why they went so hard at the idea he sucked. Like, I get the idea he might not like him, but like they made it sound like he couldn't even do his job, as he was like a 3 out of 10 or something. Like, worst case scenario, he was a 7 out of 10, you cunts. Come on, like, he was doing his fucking job. You just might have liked someone else. So to me, I just think it's a bit of a sad way to go out, because like I say, he's not going out with a fight. He's not getting the Kobe retirement tour. He's not getting, no one even from the major knew he'd probably be out, so no one even really get, if anything, the major's is going to be remembered as all the cunts going, remember that time Semler ruined the whole playoffs by casting it all himself, like, so like, what a whack way to go out, guys.
Yeah, that's crazy, and I think it's a shame that, because I think a personality like Semler definitely deserves a better send off. If that indeed is the case, I think they're without a doubt him and Anders, right, in the early years and everything, like they were the go-to pair. They delivered so many great moments for everyone, right, for the fans. But I also think on the other side of things, like times have just evolved in a sense where it's really hard for a duo who doesn't have like a clear color commentator in a sense, right, to kind of be as I don't want to say as entertaining or right, but maybe as appealing to people, and that seemed to have always been kind of Anders and Semler. They were always both a little bit of both, right?
Yes,
it's almost like they took turns, even within a best of three or between tournaments. Like, okay, I'm gonna do hype more. I'm gonna talk more about the game, right? And then I think the problem for Semler was when he had some time away doing Overwatch and stuff and came back, right? Obviously, you're going to be a little bit behind the meta and some of the stuff, right? And, like, I don't know. I haven't paid too much attention, but whether he tried to do it the same way, but just didn't really have the knowledge yet until he caught up that people were, like, so mad about. I think especially when it comes to Arena Counter-Strike, he was still bringing, like, the hype. There were still, like, great moments. It was awesome to hear, right? So I think he could, without a problem, still cast in CS and probably get to cast some good games, big tournaments, if he had like a color commentator, someone more analytical, and he could solely focus on the hype and not have to dabble it with, trying to break shit down. And, Counter-Strike is also fucking way more next level and way more complicated and way more detailed than it was 5 years ago. I mean, it's just heaven and earth at that point. So I think that's just kind of how things unfolded in a way, right? So
yeah, I'll pick up on the fact that I think Semler has a lot left to give in terms of commentary, because I think that his play-by-play, he could still do excellent play-by-play in my eyes. It's just kind of the way that Anders and Semler were occupying a similar role where like neither would like hard commit to the color side of things, like made it so they were almost stepping on each other's toes sometimes in commentary. That's kind of just how I would put it. It was never unenjoyable. I always like listening to them when I know they're going to cast a game. I feel like there's going to be a couple moments where I'm going to just find myself smiling because they did have years and years of chemistry that like always came out, even when sometimes they didn't even necessarily see eye to eye in whatever they were talking about. Sometimes it would just still be a nice friendly back and forth. And I'll say this for Semler's role though in broadcast talent, I think that he, like Yengo said, if he got a color, he could still bring a lot more. But I also think that Semler, I don't know if he knows this, but I think the host role would just do him a lot of favors. I think Semler would be an excellent host. I think the way that he does it for, the Pop Flash podcast that you do with him, Thorin, and that I was on a couple times, and I think that is like a role that suits him very well. When he hosted a couple times at Flashpoint, and I always felt like he just knew the storylines very well, was able to bring the best out of everybody because he knows what needs to be out there. And what's great about Semler is that some people that get into this space, I feel like, or maybe are like maybe a little greener in the space, don't really know what needs to be done in terms of making the broadcast the best that it can be, or putting like the best possible product out there for the listener, for the audience. And I think Semler always knows what the key points are. He knows the storylines. He knows everything that he doesn't know the fine minutia of the game necessarily, but as a host, you don't need to do that. And I think that what he's good at is extracting that sort of information when someone's around him that can do that.
It's also really eloquent, right?
Yeah, go on.
Yeah, he's very eloquent too.
I'm gonna add, right, that's also one of his strengths, so that definitely goes into the hosting role.
No, what I'd even say is, that's actually a detail I hadn't thought about myself when we started doing that show, the Pop Slash one you're talking about, Mouse Snake. Because basically the premise of it was, it's like me and Richard, but then because there's certainly the one that pays to do it, it's essentially like the people from By the Numbers, but then with Semler, but then Semler's the host. You would think that dynamic would work terribly, because obviously we've done 1 billion episodes, right, just me and Richard, right? It does actually give a totally different dynamic to the show, if you notice. And I've noticed similarly, because essentially he knows when not to interrupt us if we're just on a funny rant or something. Actually, I've noticed that's a very positive response to that show, dude. I was thinking people would think it was just filler or something, but a lot of people seem to like it as its own distinct entity. So I actually think he's doing a pretty good job as a host in that sense. And if people don't know, this is maybe the road that could have gone that didn't go down. If people remember, another thing that was ruined by online Counter-Strike coming along, everyone forgets this. when Blast announced at the beginning of 2020 their talent team, the analyst desk was Semler as the host and me and Chad were the analysts. People forget this. Yanko was still coaching back then. Moses was, actually Moses I think was just a commentator with Anders still at the time. At the time, that was like the bold direction they were going. And like basically they were trying to make like a totally new type of desk because the idea was we obviously knew Semler really well. You know, we'd get like a chemistry down and stuff. The problem is we only got to do like 3 weeks of it, 2 weeks technically because we had shocks for that 1 week. And then it was over and then we obviously Chad, I think only did the Blast at the end of last year and he was off with the ESL the whole time. I didn't work with Blast after that due to the shenanigans with ye old device when he was still cocked like a motherfucker. I can say that I even know the guy. You know you were fucking cooked, motherfucker. You're not anymore, so fucking just chill out. All right, we got you out in the Bane pit, mate. You're all right now, so don't worry about it. So all I'm going to say is, yeah, obviously I won't be working with them in that scenario. So sadly, I think that maybe even could have been an alternate route. So what I'm saying, Mary Snake, is that's what they took from us. That's what they took from us.
And also, I mean, it can't be underestimated. Like Semler's done E-League alongside other
he's done
things.
everything,
Like, he's been a broadcaster for like almost 10 years now, right? Like that's something that people, maybe don't notice as much. Like there's a lot of guys out there who know the game, right? Especially, ex-pros and whatnot. But, there's also a benefit from fucking doing the job for years and knowing, like, what actually your role is and how to deliver the best possible product and whatnot. And that's why I don't think he's going to be as easily replaced. Arguably some of the, like, people are also maybe a little bit overrated or coming in, right?
Sure.
In one way or another. But I think Counter-Strike, without a doubt, has always been blessed, like, with great talent, right? And things are like changing, like some things are changing in that sense, have been for a couple of years now, but I think we'll still be fine. There's still enough people who are really good at it, like that, we can still have good fucking content.
Here's the sad thing, mate. On the one hand, like, I obviously genuinely don't hope any event ever has tech problems or any issues and that. I just hope the event goes well and we all get a great. But I will say, there is a part of me, Yanko, low-key, hopes that all the people that every fan on Reddit asked for to be hired for the major get hired for this major, and I hope that first fucking week's just like the one we had in Romania, mate. So I'm telling you what, here's the thing, mate. When certain of us aren't there, you're going to see some of those hosts and analysts start looking around like, is this thing still on? Like, I have to talk for 10 more minutes.
Well, the problem with that isn't as much that necessarily like that particular person isn't as good as an actor.
No, of course
perhaps
not.
you are. Is the fact that the chemistry is not there. Like, even though I haven't worked with you and Richard for ages, like we always had like really good chemistry on the desk. So I can come and do a segment with you guys anytime. We can talk for an hour. We're not going to run out of things to say. It was the same with Chad and Alex, which is also why I was like looking forward. That's why I was like, yeah, like coaching, let's leave that behind for now. I'm gonna do the desk again. Like, it was a lot of fun, and then I didn't even know they were gonna like start casting, right? So then it's like, with a revolving door of the second analyst, right, and a host as well, and people who are less experienced is like, it's not as fun. It's more difficult. Like, you have to like carry everything all the time, right? Talk all the time. Because I didn't feel like working for a lot of the time. I was, whether it was Chad and Alex or you, me, and a host on the desk, right? We were just like fucking talking like we are here, slightly more careful about the language, no skull fucking there. But but yeah, like that's why it was so much fun. And that's something that you have to build with time, right? And kind of create that sort of a chemistry, and then you can deliver a much better product.
Yeah, I think that Semler is probably, because of what happened to him on Twitter at the end of last year, like, I'm not even going to get into the details about it. I think if you want to see a more well-rounded side of him, for anybody listening, like, go to Semler's own channel, watch when he talked to the two women pros.
Vilga, and I forget who the other one was.
It was Goose Breeder and
Vilga. Yeah, Vilga, the famous
Vilga, yeah,
the Russian one. Yeah,
like that was a pretty enlightening conversation. People had the floor for long stretches of time. Semler was good at facilitating conversation, where he steered it to where he wanted it to go, or like to impose like his own ideas and beliefs into it, but he wasn't commanding respect from them or like saying they have to adhere to his beliefs by any means. And I think that because that just kind of showed to me what every time I've experienced Semler in person, where even if we don't align eye to eye, it still can be a very respectful conversation that is able to bring out both sides, and we're able to kind of meet in the middle a little bit on our ideas. Like those kind of characteristics are not something I get from everybody else in this space, and it's something that goes such a long way for any host. So.
Right, let's do it then. The last category is obviously the ugly category. So, Yanko, what was the ugly one?
For me, the ugly one is the NIP roster, like ever like
the saga that never ends, right?
But just like the whole thing ever since, like, I mean, even you add the device, and there's so many things like to talk about in a way, because you can be one of two teams, right? You can be like a G2 or a Vitality who doesn't yet have the pieces, but you're gonna bring like the necessary pieces and build like a championship level team. Or you can be a Mouse who doesn't have the same funds perhaps or whatever to build the team, and then you're trying to make do with younger stars, FPL players, like they did a great thing with their academy team, right? And you're trying to kind of make it work. And then one or two things are going to happen. If you're a team like Mouse, what's going to happen, like we saw, you have a superstar like Krops trapped in that team, and sooner or later, like, he's going to leave that team. Just matters whether you're going to be able to sell him, or he's just going to wait out his contract and then leave for free, right? Because the appetite of the players, like, you don't give him enough pieces around him where he can even think about being able to win with that team. At that point, like, you just have to let him go somewhere else, right? So what NIP wanted to do, they were like displaying it like they were going to be like a Vitality, like a G2, right? And Device is like the main key about that championship level team. And then you have him play with fucking ZTR, LNZ, all these academy player teams. They're not awful, but they're pretty bad. Like, they're not even like manageable level. And then the veterans that you have are Rez, who hasn't done anything for a very, very long. Like, he's like that fucking thing where he just gives you a little bit of a taste every now and then, where he wants to like make you believe, like, look at this guy, he can actually.
He's the Swedish Flammy. There you go. It's the Swedish Flammy.
Kinda, in a way, right? So then you have that where he's like constantly just doing enough to keep himself there. That's a perfect fucking comparison.
I know.
Actually. Yeah. And then you have Plopsky, who was actually like pretty good like 2 years ago when he first came along. Yes. And you were like, yeah, this guy's like, who's better, like him or Brolan? Like, they're actually like, you know, you thought Brolan was like the hot shit and Plopsky's playing really well. Now he's like absolute trash, albeit he played like decent at this tournament. But again, it was online, it was whatnot. So that's your team there, where like Hampus as the in-game leader is your best player, and he's their best player by far. Yeah, not only because of the kills that he's getting, but you look at how he's playing, you can see that his brain and his like mechanics as well are on the level of the best players, right? Like, you can see that he can, you know, a mind game against them and play against them, and you have Device who can do the same, and then you have three guys who are not doing anything. So how is Device, you know, and also everything he's been going through, and not just that, but also, you know, there's a huge amount of pressure going from a team like Astralis, and all the stories about, oh, can he do it outside of the system and whatnot? Well, that, I mean, you have to, there's a difference between playing outside of a system like Astralis's and playing outside of any system, right? Or without any help in what NIP was. So I think like the problem was there from the start. It's like, there's no point in bringing Device if you're gonna make him play in that lineup. And they were the most deceiving team, because they were like finished top 4 or they were top 2 here. They were like number 2 in the world for a long time. I wouldn't put them in the top 5, you know, because they would just sometimes get an easier bracket and beat like a team to get a high placing, but every time they would play like a really good team. You know, they couldn't beat a Vitality, couldn't beat a Navi ever in their life, and so on, right? So even then, like, you after a while you realize that, so you bring S-Tag. I mean, this is the problem. When you say someone is overrated, people equate that immediately with you saying they're bad, right? I think he's a really good support player. But when that announcement happened, it's almost like they brought, you know, Nico onto the team to help him out, right? I think he's a really good player in a role that's important, but you had you know, bigger fires to put out before like you made that change. So that's another good piece. He's also a Dane. That probably helps a little bit, right? But, you know, while Rez and Plopsky are on that team, I have no faith in that lineup. If you know, want to be considered on the same level as some of these contenders, maybe I can leave one of the two if they're in some role that they can execute that role, right? Like, every team needs a perfecto or, you know, whatnot. If one of them is gonna do that and do it well, then okay. But if Rez is supposed to be your second star, like the star rifle of the team, you're screwed. If Plopsky, you would think that he was like skilled enough to maybe be the anchor or something like that, right? But he's not showing that right now. So yeah, that's why I think like NIP, their last year has been a nightmare for them. And, I'll give them a little bit of slack that, what's going on with Device now, they probably couldn't, obviously you can't predict that. You can't predict some of the stuff that has been going on with him in his personal life that has affected his performance. But I think even if you're getting peak Device, the rest of the players are just not good enough for you to be a contender.
I think that the rifle core of NIP is just so weak. Like you said you picked on Rez a little bit there, and I've been kind of saying that as well. Like, I mean, attached to my big top 5 prediction was the Keto is just going to do better than Rez for the first 6 months of this year. I'm pretty sold out on Rez. I don't really care about. I don't think he's going to become anything ever anymore. I think that ship has sailed for a long time, and I think that he makes just too many bad plays. Like, he just flat out throws rounds sometimes, and like so if you watch that game against OG where they played on Mirage, it was map 3. I think NIP had 15 rounds, like OG on 14. I think it was a 4v2 or something with Nexa and Nico, and Rez was in window with somebody else, and basically they had OG trapped in mid basically, and it was just like the round's over, and Rez just jumps up and dies, and it was like I was watching, like it was just like he just jumped up in the window, like tried jumping and shooting him or something. So just total trash. And I was like, dude, you just threw your advantage, you threw the lead. Like then it went to OT, they lost the game, and I just I basically, when I watched that live, I actually face palmed, and I wasn't even rooting for NIP. I was just like, that's just such a stupid ass play. Don't do that, like, because it's just bad Counter-Strike. I don't want to watch this. So like Rez is just like, he's just not improved at all over 3 years, and I don't think he has the capability to do it, because it's been way too long at this point for me to have any hope that he's going to become anything more than what he was at IEM Oakland, which was the peak of his powers, by the way. Like
4.5 years ago. That was 2017. That's almost 5 years now that it's been that moment.
Yeah, there's nothing that I'm holding out for on this team anymore, other than what I would have wanted to see. I think I probably said this on a podcast maybe 7 months ago, is that just keep Hampus. I forgot who I wanted to keep, but it was like, get rid of Plopsky. At this point, get rid of Rez. Keep Hampus, but don't make him the IGL, because these T sides, although I think at Blast these T sides look better for NIP, I think what they showed in the entirety of last year was so poor on their structural T sides that I don't want Hampus to IGL anymore. Like, too many rounds go too long where they never group up and they just keep prodding one by one and they all die, and it's just like, dude, what was ever the plan in that round? Like, I have no idea what you guys thought was going to accomplish anything. So I want NIP to just completely revamp this roster. Keep Hampus. He's a good player. You're right. He's actually he has the potential to be a top 20, 25 player out there, but he's not getting it with this lineup.
The stupid thing as well to me is this. This is another one of those scenarios where, in the same way as the Astralis scenario can't be fixed because it comes with the assumption you have to keep Locky. Whereas, like, the first thing you should say is, but why do we have to keep Locky? That's the obvious way you'd fix Astralis tomorrow, right? Same scenario here with NIP. So the one condition we're all told, it cannot be questioned, is they must speak Swedish. Well, why the fuck would that be? They're not even good. They have no chemistry. Why the fuck would they need to speak Swedish? Speaking Swedish ain't working out for them. I don't know if you're aware of that. And they all speak really good English. By the way, Device speak phenomenal English. So the first thing I would do tomorrow is immediately just get rid of the Swedish thing, because if we keep it Swedish as well, this is not a joke. We're now going to have to start asking, like, do we bring fucking Golden back? Like, these are the only names left. Like, I don't think people are thinking this through. There are no IGLs in the Swedish scene. Spoiler, Fnatic already did this. That's why Fnatic had to go with the Alex route and go to English instead. And basically, they're not a Swedish team anymore. They are, just by virtue of the fact Crimson Brawling are really good and happen to be from Sweden. That's it. So to me, it's obvious at this point with NIP. Whether or not you're going to get big name signings doesn't sound like they want to spend money if you look at who they're picking up. I think you have to just go international, get a couple of these players out, bring someone in. I mean, the real ridiculous thing is this. The joke is, if they actually had the foresight to understand being Swedish isn't even really a marketing angle at this point in time, like, why aren't they one of the teams that was in the mix to get someone like Nexa? I would be trying to get a player like that into a team like this. Like, can add some fragging, has done some IGL in at a decent level. You're fucking Swedish. You all play default Counter-Strike anyway. You know, it's not like you need some big brain, is it? You just need a guy who just does his job. So, to me, like, I think you fix this team in obvious ways, but yeah, it has to be a rebuild. Like, there's no one player's being added to this team that's making it all really cool and it's going to work out. Like, pick who you want kicked out, even if it's Blopsky. There isn't anyone walking through the door that's doing his job better, especially not if they have to be bloody Swedish or speak Swedish. So, to me, I think they've painted themselves into a corner, as we say in English. There's no way out of this situation. Even if Device comes back and plays the best CS Device ever played, think about the discussion we had earlier about all the amazing lineups. They wouldn't even be a relevant contender, even if he fragged out completely.
The only way to salvage it and not get rid of all the Swedes is to like get Crimson Brolan from Fnatic. But
that's the other move, right? Yeah,
that's obviously not going to happen. Because Fnatic's not going to, I assume, like ever allow that to happen. And you know, because Fnatic already has 3 British players, so they can't just get anyone else English speaking, right? And those 2 players would actually fit, but I don't think that's a move that's possible for NIP to make, even if they wanted to, even if they want to spend an extra $1 million for those 2 players. I don't think that's like a doable deal. So yeah, and that's actually a pretty sad thing. I mean, considering where Sweden was, like they've just been so little talent, like even individually, just like a good player that doesn't have to play for a Swedish team, right? Just an individually good player. Like we got more Israeli players that are really good in the last like 2-3 years than we did with Swedes. Like that's crazy.
I'll throw one last thing in there because I'll join the Rez hate train, as it were, because I'll do it from this angle. Why are we pretending like this guy was Dupree or something? He never even was a truly great player. He was just a pretty good player. And if you remember, what made him cool was they tried all those players from the team he was on, Disco, Darplane, Drake. All the other ones didn't make it, right? He was the one that made it, right? Okay, cool. But when I say he made it as a competent tier 1 pro, and he had, the IM Auckland, and let's say the odd tournament elsewhere where he fragged out as an entry. Okay, that's all cool. But people are talking like this is some like legendary player from 5 years ago, and now he's fallen off. Because you know, even when people do that angle of like, yeah, but he's a veteran. Is he? He's played a lot of Counter-Strike. To me, a veteran's someone like Cajun B, who's played the game for like 10 plus years, mate. That guy has so much life experience. He's been on great teams. He's been in major semis. Like, that guy can actually tell you something. What's Rez going to tell you? Like, did I ever tell you the story about I am kind of like, you know what I mean? He's got like his own version of Chad's shit story about Titan, except unironically, he's just like, I am Auckland. So everything's just I am Auckland, isn't it? Like, what else are you going to tell me?
Duncan, you want to hear a mind-blowing
Come on.
Rez is older than Magisk. So,
Rez, step your fucking game up, son. Step your
that, right? Like, I just want to check how old he is, right? But he's not like, you know, he's
what is he, like 25 or something?
He's 24. 24, yeah. Mag is 23. It's like a guy who's already achieved so much and been a great player individually and like won obviously a lot of tournaments with Astralis, and he's still younger than Rez, who's like, we're still waiting for him to do something. I think also these fucking kids, like, you know, Brocky, Bit, who else is there? Like, you know, Yakindar even, right? Like, they've raised the bar for how long you have as a player coming in to show. Even guys like Flamesy, right? Like, you know, not on the same level, but still pretty decent, right? And so on. Like, you just see that there's other talent out there, and you're not going to be as patient as you were maybe a couple of years ago with letting these guys develop. I mean, okay, I don't want to even use the word develop with Rez. He's been around for like 4 years now, so...
And by the way, to me, the annoying thing about this whole NIP scenario is this. If Device ever comes back, everything we just said has to happen. They have to completely rebuild the team because it's a waste of his time if he doesn't. And by the way, Lord forgive he doesn't return. If he doesn't return, what is even the... Like, literally, is anyone in the fan of NIP tomorrow if Device isn't ever coming back? Like, they're just... Like, if with the lineups we're talking about before, when everyone is at full power, this won't even be a top 10 team. This will be like the 13th best team in the world, which, by the way, won't be terrible. Like, again, once you reset your evaluation, it's okay. But you had Device, mate. You had a chance to go the other direction last year, and that's probably the sickest thing. I'll end on this point, and then we'll move on, which is this. You guys were way ahead of everyone making the roster move. If you'd have been really shrewd between when Device... I think Device joined at the beginning of May last year. If you were really shrewd with which moves and who you took and when you sort of went for the big bid or you went for a small... They could have had an amazing lineup before everyone else. They could have been the ones that instantly reacted to the major and had the next players coming in. Instead, they've just let everyone else in the world go on the transfer market. And now there's a real world where, look, I'm not giving any secret info here. It's just the vibe I get from the scene. I think there's now a very real alternate timeline might exist in soon where he might never play for them again. I'm getting that vibe. Like, the longer he's out the lineup, the more nervous I get he never comes back. You know what I mean?
Yeah, just to see they have a proper plan. Like, I was just checking one thing. Like, Alex, Messi, they joined in August, like to
Yes.
Fnatic, right? So Fnatic was also in that weird flux where you actually maybe would have had a chance to make that deal happen. Then obviously, it would be a lot of money in a short amount of time to spend. But still, that gives you immediately like the lineup. That's actually a lineup who even Device is going to be like. I mean, remember he played against Crims his whole career. Even when Crims was on that Fnatic lineup, they own everyone. So there's a ton of respect there. I still think Crims can be
He's
really
mega,
good,
man.
like on a really good team, right?
Yes.
He's been the one shining light in that shit Fnatic
Agreed.
team before they made the changes, right? So it just also kind of, I really do think that they actually believed in NIP that like whether it was ZTR or LNZ and that combination of players with just Device, and maybe that one change, that was like good enough for them to win shit, because they were like even saying something ridiculous like, yeah, we're aiming for the major, like, they were like, oh, are you fucking delusional or what? And look at the landscape now. Now it's never going to happen now, is it?
I mean, the joke is they kept saying all that shit about the NIP system, didn't they? They're trying to like chastise Chad about the NIP system. It's like, motherfucker, what system? What system was that exactly? What system of lies? Right, go on then. What's your ugly point, Mauisnik? What was yours?
Mine is that it's pretty ugly to know that it seems like Flashpoint's dead, and I don't have like an official word on this, but just the fact that there's kind of in a way no room in the calendar for them to operate for at least the next 3 months, and probably after that. I mean, the fact is that the teams just don't even have rosters that are partner teams with it. And I'll take the angle on this because of it is that it kind of just goes. It kind of strikes me poorly in a handful of ways. The first is that it kind of hits me similarly to how when Cloud9 fell apart, how there was so much community backlash or just malice towards it. Like, I don't know, and I don't really understand why that was a thing. Why so many people almost wanted to see it fail. Like it was because people just didn't like Monty and Thorin. Basically, that's what I gathered from
That
it.
definitely helped. I'll give you that.
Yeah, and so I don't really. But beyond that, like people just wanted to see it do worse, as if they're okay with the status quo of ESL and Blast monopolizing the calendar as it is. And that kind of leads me to my second point, which is that now ESL and Blast basically do own so much of the calendar, with the exception that PGL has this little window to prove themselves once again with the upcoming major and RMR events. Like WePlay is trying to get into the calendar, but they're just relegated to doing an Academy League, which I don't think they're too unhappy about, but I'm sure they would want more space than that. And so really for Flashpoint to go away means that there was an attempt made to try to unseat to the Blast and ESL cycle that we've been in for the last few years, and it failed. And I think that is just not hopeful for the future. I'm not even going to get into like the sponsorship or the buyout of ESL / Faceit, because like that all just plays into the fact that it's not good to see that one conglomerate kind of force is running the CSGO space in what was championed as being the most open circuit.
Oh, for sure, yeah.
Esport.
Yes.
Yeah, I mean, I think I always believe that competition is great for consumers, right? Like it just makes everyone deliver a better product because you're fighting for the same audience. I mean, just look at what happened with player treatment for one as well. Like when E-League came in, I mean, they just showed a different level of hospitality. Obviously, production, execution of the show. I mean, it took me a while to work with them, but when I did, you're just blown away by the professionalism and just the ability of everyone on that crew, and you see how easy actually it can be sometimes, that you don't have to do the job for 5 people. You can actually just do your own job and other people will do their jobs and you will deliver a great show. I think so. For Flashpoint, for me, it was cool because, there seemed to be a lot of focus on the content and like the format was cool. It was different. I think they were going the right way. Unfortunately, obviously the fucking pandemic kind of ruined it. And the inability to get more established teams, not even necessarily like the best teams in the world, to be a part of it, just so you don't have so many orgs who don't even feel the roster to get into the game, because you're kind of trusting them that they are going to get a roster, a competitive roster, or at least like a fun one that is going to be interesting to watch, one that has a following. And then you had like weird teams or orgs not fielding teams, right? So that also was the problem. So I think not even so much in terms of a monopoly or like not being a competitor. I just think from like the approach of how it was supposed to be run, for me, it's a shame that it didn't get a little bit more life to it, right? That we couldn't see like if with a couple of better teams, because it's hard. Like as Duncan said a million times in different shows, like when you're having like fucking Mad Lions versus Contact, like you can only do so much to make it interesting. They're just not as interesting, either the teams or the personalities level of Counter-Strike is not the same, right? There's only so much you can do. You can't make it look like it's Navi versus Vitality, because then you're doing a disservice to the fans and to the game, right? So if it had a little bit more life and maybe got a little bit better teams down the line, because you know how it is, everyone's a fucking pussy, everyone wants proof of concept, everyone's sticking with what they know, right? And also, I mean, when a company hears a competitor is trying to make a move, like they're also gonna try to make a move of their own to keep the teams and not let them to move away and whatnot. So yeah, in that sense, I think it like definitely would have been like awesome to see a little bit more of that stuff. And I know we've been pushing for some of the stuff that was on that show to kind of get to do, right, and being able to kind of showcase our talent and our ability a little bit more.
Yeah, but obviously it goes without saying, Maui Snake is correct that like me being part of the face of the brand, there's the problem. People don't get this. This is what I think people really still don't get. Because I even had owners, not within Flashpoint, but I had owners try to tell me that I took like the wrong marketing approach of Flashpoint. And I remember telling them, that just shows me you know nothing about marketing, mate. I had people talking, like literally furiously every day discussions about a league that had Mad Lions versus Contact as like a marquee matchup. You try doing that. You go and work for Republic or fucking Snow Sweet Snow, and you get teams hyped, even for, by the way, this like Gambit plays in those tournaments, and no one gives a fuck. Like, the point is, I knew in that scenario, I have nothing to work with. All I have actually is me and Monty. That's it. So essentially, that's the angle I had to use. And then secondly, I'll just reiterate, this is just a fact. I was told behind the scenes, yes, they sort of were slick with how this contract was phrased. We have Astralis signed, and since Astralis is signed, they didn't know which ones, but it would have been like Fnatic Mouse Sports or OG and, I don't know, I can't remember all the teams I've talked about, OG and Evil Genius. There would have been like Astralis, and then the notion was at least 2 other like top 10 teams come, right? If you go in knowing that you've got that in your back pocket, now you can see why I was so abrasive with the ESL. Because my premise was, if you just give me the best team and then 2 other top 10 teams, they can have the other 7 teams. I've got enough to at least now make a little bit of impact. And now I can show you, to Janko's point, now I can show you the difference when we have Astralis play EG in our match with all of our broadcast and all the cool things. Now you'd see the proof of concept, wouldn't you? Whereas the real problem was, because A, no one's tuning in for Mad Lions Contact anyway, and B, you're just not as interested in the match. Like, no one's able to show off that quality. So essentially the premise did fail. And then I'll say this as well. This is a really weird angle, but I've noticed it with fans, because this is part of why I noticed fans seem to get really pissed off with every broadcast deal where the rights went to YouTube, Facebook. It wasn't even, they'll tell you now it's because Facebook. So they said that before they'd even seen a stream, dude. They didn't know the tech wasn't going to be there, because spoiler, YouTube tech was always there and the old lied and said it was shit. So here's my problem. There's an angle at which young people nowadays, it's almost like they hate the idea of anyone else has any ambition. Like if you make a statement like, I think this is wrong and I'm going to try and do it better, it's like they're preying on your downfall, even though in the long run, like, wouldn't it be great for all of us if there was another, like I used to even say when Flashpoint the first year was going on, like, dude, how are they going to hate on us for bringing 2 tournaments with $2 million and just giving it away? Like, even if you think the teams are shit, we're giving millions of dollars away to the shit team. Like, how could that ever be a net negative to the scene? Even if you don't like me, you have to admit that's pretty fucking sick, isn't it? Obviously you want that in the space, but the joke is they really were just sort of like cut off their nose to spite their face, just like, nah, you think you're better than ESL, etc. And there's another thing, by the way. I've noticed this happens if you're ever someone who's in a position where you criticise people, but you don't have like skin in the game. Because this happened to Yanko, happened to my mate Monty when he coached CLG and had his own team, Renegades and League of Legends, right? The logic goes like this. It's the most midwit logic of all time. It goes like this. But Yanko was saying what I'll give you an example. Like, Janko was saying what Astralis did wrong in that match that they lost to North, but then when he had FaZe, he didn't beat them, did he? It's like, that's such a non sequitur. That's insane. Like yeah, I know to a dumbass that makes perfect sense, right? To us, it doesn't make any sense at all, is it? Because it's like the premise of, like, I can obviously say I think Tom Brady's overrated, but he's going to fucking dust me off if I try and play like fucking edge rusher and run out. Like, I'm never even going to get to him, am I? But it won't make me wrong. But in a weird way, to a fan, that they do think that was like the moment that proved, like, say, you knew nothing about the game. So on some fucked up level, that I think that would definitely played into it. I'll also agree. Listen, I can't say anything officially. I don't know anything. I only know rumours from behind the scenes. As far as I know, there won't be any more Flashpoint CS tournaments, and I do not expect these orgs to buy teams, and I think that's over. I'll say that one detail. This is why I don't blame anyone, though, except the Flashpoint orgs for what happened with Flashpoint. Certainly, online stuff and all the restrictions hurt it. We couldn't have the players in the studio. Certainly, it wasn't as cool for me. I was actually planning on moving to America and setting a whole base there and making all extra content with Monty outside of the seasons. That would have been very interesting. But here's the one thing that I will say that it deserved to die as a league. It's like I said, funnily enough, this is going to be a great line, because it's exactly the reason why way back, if you remember, before Flashpoint, the project was originally done at the end of 2016. It was going to be called PEA, if everyone remembers. Like Professional Esports Association, whatever the fuck it was going to be. And it was going to be like an American, kind of like Flashpoint, but it was going to be all the American orgs. And if you remember, it was Sean Gares, who was in TSM temporarily at the time, who sort of battled on the side of the players. And the players battled because they were going to make them choose between EPL and PEA. And the players chose EPL, and they just canned the PEA project for a few years. If people don't know, I remember even saying to my friends who were the owners, funnily enough, some of the people on the Flashpoint project, dude, if you can't convince your own player who you've contracted, how am I supposed to convince the whole world, you idiot? Like, you can't even convince the guy who you pay for a living. Like, he should be biased to you, shouldn't he? So I'd say the same thing. If it's true that Counter-Strike needed to be saved in some way, maybe from the ESL owners of the world, etc., and that Flashpoint was the way, if you can't sell the teams in Flashpoint, who in theory only buy in because they agree there's a problem, if you can't convince them to buy a proper lineup, then yeah, the whole project is a waste of everyone's time. Like, that was the first thing on the check mark, which is, because remember, that was the other thing they did tell me as well. The whole first season, they were telling me, look, don't worry that we didn't get the big teams. We'll just buy all the big players and teams. Hence why all that saga where I had loads of players. I was trying to recommend everyone. And the people know the joke, but I'll say it for the punchline. The joke went like this, Janko. It's not untrue. They did sign players I recommended and coaches. But here's what they would all do. The orgs that listened would get my list. And it'd be like this. It'd be like, right, if you get a coach, like I'd go with like Zeus first. I've got Janko and Casada available. And then just as a courtesy, right, it's not a joke, I'd put at the end, like, and look, just because obviously, you know, like, it's up to me to be biased, that you can get like Raging or something, they're available at the end. They would just go to the bottom of the list because the cheapest guy is the most available, and they would all just sign that guy. And so I can just say it right now, I don't care. Look who FPX are. They're all the people at the bottom of the fucking list. They were getting the players at the bottom, the fucking coaches at the bottom, the GM at the bottom. So they did listen, but they didn't get any of the ones I recommended, obviously. So whatever. And yeah, luckily I can look back and laugh now. There's enough times away from me. It doesn't get to me anymore. I just think, fuck them, whatever. Just still, at this point, it doesn't even feel like it was me. It was like some alternate reality that I escaped from and shifted over to this timeline where I can pretend it never happened. So we'll move on now. The last point.
Yeah. I mean, I have another.
Let's do it.
Yeah, I have another one. I have another point for this one. It's just basically the fact that there's now no kind of North American league to aspire to.
That's true.
Is huge for the scene in a negative fashion. Such that I mean, it's obvious that Valorant has taken over North America, and it's like there's a slow, slight rebuild that's happening right now, and I'm hopeful for it. I'm optimistic, but I'm not like that high on it either. I'm pretty realistic about it. I mean, I even basically moved from like living in Hawaii and West Hollywood to now. When I got the opportunity that I could live in London, I was just like, yeah, because there's just nothing happening in America. So why would I be there? And it's just it really hurts because for so many reasons beyond the fact that like, oh, there's no NA teams, it's like the no NA market. Like that's just so much more money. And look at where the money had to come from for ESL recently, because what do they think of their prospects in the future if there's no like Burbank studio that's being used right now? Like I don't even know what's happening with that. If anything, it might just like be gone, or they might have sold it by now. I don't know. But either way, like it's just kind of like there's no reason for anybody to like want to do really well other than the long shot objective of breaking in maybe to the major. I think is the only goal now for like a North American Premier team. It's like whereas before there was that stepping stone of Pro League, and then you could get to some international competition. Now it's just like ESL Challenger League, then the major. Like, what kind of jump is that? It's just so ridiculous. So, yeah, on top of that, like Flashpoint did a good job. It did a service in that it was giving like NA qualifier spots consistently
for sure.
to teams, and like how that Orgless team, for example, even though they kind of squandered the last couple weeks of that tournament for themselves, but like, you know, it gave them at least a roadmap.
Right, for the last one, my ugly point, and I've specifically picked this for ugly because it's more of a nuanced one than just bad. Like, I do think you should pick between, but you shouldn't just make bad and ugly the same concept. I've just put Rops is going to have to probably miss Katowice for FaZe, basically. Because if people don't know, this is, in a way, this is why it's also ugly. It's not purely bad, because essentially, people can't remember, when we had the first LAN last year, IEM Cologne, if you remember, there were teams there that were having issues. Like, some of them were popping for COVID, or they had to stay in there. But at the time, they just said, because everyone was in a room anyway, until he got to the part where you played in like a studio environment or whatever, they essentially just said back then, whatever, you just all play from your rooms, don't you? Because now they're trying to go back to a true LAN scenario. Even if Rops is at the event, he has to just stay in quarantine and effectively can't play in the tournament unless they're still in Katowice whenever he would be finished in, like, I don't know, 10 days or something like that. So the downside is, to me, it's ugly in the sense that, like, it's obviously just ruined the storyline for FaZe. Now we can't see how Rops is playing. He was looking really good. To me, it was also another one of those moves where it was obviously only a single player change. It should have been one of the easiest to integrate. They, in theory, could have, if they were going to be really good, this should have been an event they could have broke out at and had a top placing. But at the same time, I can't say it's totally bad. Like, in a weird way, the fact that he will be excluded and not like the old rules actually in some ways suggests maybe we're moving back towards the world we all want to be in, as opposed to the world where it's like, it's a LAN, but this team just played the whole thing from their hotel room. Like, that also did fucking suck, or we had to make those weird distinctions of like what a real LAN is, you know?
Yeah, the LAN light and all that shit. Yeah, I also fucking hated that because they played well. At Blast, Rops also played super good, and you know, it feels bad like FaZe. It's almost like there's some curse over the team that's like, can never really like just get there and like make it happen. I think he can still make the event. Like, I don't know how many games he's gonna miss. Like, if he gets an early like negative test, right? I don't know what exactly the protocol is, but he can still attend at some point, depending on how the testing goes. But yeah, that sucks. Hopefully nothing else happens, because for me, I think it's like at this point, it you know, like it should be treated. There shouldn't be such a big deal out of it, right? Because I think it's kind of obvious that these newer strains are also like much milder, and you know, even when I've had it, like the start of January, all of my friends, everyone I knew had it. It's like a day you're feeling like a little bit bad, and then after that, it's gone, right? Like, and we can see that the countries are opening up more, getting rid of all the measures and stuff. So I'm really optimistic about like COVID not being like too big of a factor in the future. At least I'm super confident that we'll be able to have LANs for all the big tournaments, right? Like, obviously the major is going to be a LAN, you know, Blast Springs finals are going to be a LAN, Cologne is going to be, and not just LAN, but LAN with a crowd. Yes. Because at this point, you not making it a LAN is more you not being willing or able to go like the length you need to go. If a country like Denmark is getting rid of like all the fucking you know, measures and whatnot, like, then, you know, Blast worst case can do a spring final in a sort of a studio environment with like 300-500 people, which is still pretty cool, right? With how close they are, you know. Even when we played that thing in London, the spring groups in 2020, it was still like kind of cool. You could still hear the fans a little bit, right? It's better than just what you get for group stages in, you know, at IEMs, where, you know, you're in that thing when there's no people there, right? You get at least a little bit of a feeling. So yeah, I'm not, you know, I think hopefully it's going to get better. I'm not going to go on a limb and compare what's going on to the Holocaust, right, or anything crazy like that. But yeah, I think like that things should start easing up sooner rather than later, and that hopefully we'll be back to normal by summer or so.
See, the only thing that annoys me about that, Yanko, is of all the people who were getting really mad, so people are going to really tell me that you can't spend years just comparing things inappropriately to the Nazis. Well, isn't this fucking rich, isn't it? I don't know if any of y'all are aware. Shall I pull up some of my haters for the last fucking, let's just say, since Donald Trump was elected, because we all know that was the real moment that apparently just shattered reality like fucking Thanos or some shit at the end of Infinity War. I don't know why that one moment just made the whole world go mental, but whatever. It is what it is at this point. I've learned to just deal with it, so whatever. Indeed, there has been some bold comparisons. Let's just say that.
Okay, all right. I'm gonna move away from the politics, bring it back to the love of the game, the spirit of the game. That even though
I've got a question for you, Maui, because here's the thing.
I was like you many years ago.
Here's the thing, Maui. You could just do the safe thing and explain that, FaZe could you rock. But there was a secret reason I also slipped this one under there. There's been some slander of Rops I've been seeing of you on some of these shows. So I also want to confront you. So I want to hear your thoughts first, but then I've got a little bit of pushback for you on this one.
Okay, well, if you want to, my opinion on Rops, to put it out there as publicly as possible, is just that I'm a bit of a person that undervalues I think he's mad overrated. I think Rops is like probably the most overrated player in all of tier 1 CS. Actually, I think that he has if you took away the stats and looked at rounds where he actually creates winning impact, it's not nearly as high as his stats are there for. That's my take on Rops. I think that Rops is incredibly talented. He's it's really cool to watch his methodical way to play out every situation, because it's it's almost like you're using a poker bot when you're playing Hold'em, when you actually get told exactly what you should do on every hand based off of pot odds. Yeah. And it kind of feels like Rops is mentally calculating that all the time. So in terms of demos to watch to learn the game, he's fantastic. In terms of actually always making the play that's going to win in that moment, or in the greater scheme of things, I don't think he's always doing that. I feel like he's frequently dude, why did you not try that 1v2 even though the bomb still had 25 seconds left and you're this mechanically gifted? What's going on here? I've seen him say he was the A player for Mouse Sports, and he would save the opposing team, the T side, would hit the A bomb site, and he'd be in apartments. This
is on Mirage, I'm guessing we're talking about, right?
No, on Inferno. On Inferno, right? Okay. On Inferno, he would be in the apartments. He'd get a kill in the apartments, and then just not ever peek again for the entire round. And it's just dude, this is a good post plant situation for a retake, and you decide that you're not even gonna try to even go for a jiggle at any point in this. It's just shameless. It's just shameless to me sometimes. The way he plays is so stats driven. I will say that what I saw from him from FaZe was more motivated and more inspired, and it was actually a much better look for him, because even though I'm a hater in terms of how he plays the game, I'm not a hater as who he is as the person. I wouldn't I'm not one of those craze fans that just wish ill will, or they wish that you put the foot under them as they take a jump shot so they break their ankle. I don't want that to happen in the game or anything like that. I want the best team possible out there to play. So it's a bummer, because I want to see him continue on this path to play motivated, inspired again under Kerrigan, play what looked like winning Counter-Strike, and try to because I want to be proven wrong in these sort of situations so that I can enjoy the CS more, as opposed to just hating on this little micro thing that he's doing where it's okay, that's efficient, but it's not actually winning.
Oh, so you don't like him, but you're just saying you're not going out of your limb and sending him death threats and shit.
No.
Okay.
But the thing is, what you said as well, that round, it's winnable, you can just peek and so on, you just need to hide. Well, and the reason why it's different this phase might also be because his teammates fucking sucked in Mouse, so he felt he's gonna be better off.
Just preserve the stats. Just preserve.
No, it's not just the stats. It feels you feel if you bait your teammate, even though it's not the ideal play, it's if you are the bait for him, he's still not going to be able to do shit. So even though that's the correct play, because you don't think he's going to be able to do it, you're going for the less percentage play, but in your head it's higher, because you're more confident in your ability with a worse play than your teammates with a better play, right? And obviously on FaZe, he has really skilled teammates, so he can just play how it's supposed to be done, and then he has a twist or a Rain who's going to trade him, he knows how to react to that. So that wouldn't be beyond me, even though in my experience, good players, they never really think like that. Even with Nico and Cold, when they had some bad teammates at different rosters, right? They would still kind of try to go for the correct play, even though it didn't work, then they would just be depressed afterwards because, someone misses a kill in the back. But yeah.
Right, here's the pushback I have, Maui. Now, I've got a little bit more with. There's still more you haven't said, but we'll draw that out here in a minute, right? So we'll address the first point. So first things first, here's my issue. Look, it's very easy to get drawn into recency bias, because the stuff we remember the most recently, we all... if people don't get this, right, one of the reasons it's stupid to me, that fans are if you really... Why don't you just pull up a video example of what you're talking about? Because if you actually followed the game like we all did, we're doing that in our brains as we speak anyway. That's what we're talking about when we're doing style of play, or when the person's good, or how... We're basically remembering really quickly basically like 15 different really significant moments in our mind that we couldn't just like break down and articulate. Essentially, you just have to take for granted that we know what we're talking about, right? When we do that, it's easy if you're talking about the Rops that played at the majors specifically, that era of mouse sports. I do think in that era of mouse sports, he was completely checked out. He knew this team's never going anywhere, and I should already be in a FaZe Clan or a team like that. Essentially, I have to just wait for these business motherfuckers to just get the deal done. I want to be there. They want me to be there. The players, you know, everyone basically wants this deal done, but I have to wait. And by the way, Yanko can tell you, it's the most annoying shit of all time when you're waiting for a deal that's supposed to happen because you feel like it never got to start yet. You're like, right, this isn't real what we're doing now, is it? This is just fucking spinning our wheels till this guy gets here. So unfortunately, I will say, I could imagine totally there's a world where it's like Yanko says, right? If my teammates are people who I've played with for months and months and months and months now, and they just haven't made progress, and they just don't make the right plays, I'm going to have trust issues. Like, yeah, I agree, you look like a cunt mouse, Nick, if you do it. And it's not, by the way, it's also, I do think in his case, he knew he was getting in a phase anyway. But if you were truly auditioning, it's also not a great look. Someone might actually look like you're saying and go, maybe his stats are inflated, maybe he's just baiting, basically. But I'll give you the example of my favourite basketball player, Kobe, right? There's a brilliant explanation he once gave to a guy where the guy basically just said to him, like, why are you the way you are? Like, why are you so hard on your teammates? And he said, because I know the guy who doesn't even come to practice early. In fact, he turns up 2 minutes before practice. He's like eating a burger and then he just plays half-assed at the practice because it's a practice. And then in the game, he wants me to pass him the ball because he's open. It's like, why would I pass him the ball? I'll take the shot myself over a defender. Like, the difference is I can rely on what I'm going to do. And I'll just, and the premise there is, look, obviously Kobe would tell you, in theory, the player who's open should have a higher percentage. But his point that he's making is he actually can't rely on that guy, even if he's open to make the shot. Like, it actually might be better for me to take a shot over a defender, even if it's a worse shot. Because I know I put in all the practice. Like, I actually know what I can do. And unfortunately, I've seen loads of really great players when they think a lineup's gone to shit, do that. Just basically play like in a bit of a cunty way, but their logic is it's fucked as it sounds. I always said this. It's why I never actually criticised Nico's drive for the game of Counter-Strike. I believe he always thought he was doing the right thing at each point in time. I believe he actually genuinely just didn't think Karrigan was that good at that point in time for him as the IGL. I can believe all that. I'm not like saying he's like faking or pretending. It's just I disagree obviously with whether that's how you would execute it like you do here. My problem is this, and this is the last part that I did set up. Right, I was cool with the slander when it was just essentially he's being a bit of a cunt. But then I think you did. This is where I want to see if you can defend this. You then tried. Now listen, we all know the best way to make one point is to make a really edgy side point, isn't it? That sort of, woo. Here's what you said. You tried to make the case, but the others I noticed weren't even fucking listening on that podcast because one of those shows where everyone's on a second monitor the whole time. They don't listen like I do. But here's the thing, Murray, I do listen. So you were this close to saying that Frozen is better than Rops. True. Frozen is better than Rops, right?
I know the way I put it for Frozen versus Rops is that when Frozen has a 1.2 rating in a game, they win the game. When Rops has a 1.2 rating, that's just any game. It has no bearing on the winningness or the losingness of whatever team Rops is on.
That's it. Yes, that's how you phrased it. Here's my problem with that. It's an obvious follow-up I hope you have considered. Because in the games where Frozen has the 1.1 odd rating, Rops probably also does really well. He's fucking almost always doing well. The problem is this, right? If I take out Rops and you only have Frozen, and I take out Frozen, I only have Rops, which team's doing better? I think it's going to be the latter. You can disagree, but that's my problem with that. Essentially what you've done there is you've took someone who doesn't have the expectation of being the star player, and it would be like doing the same thing about Bit. Like, I'm sure when Bit has the best stats in Na'Vi, they've never lost a game. But the point is, like you can't say he's better than Simple, can you? Because the team construction wouldn't be the same. So where do you fall on that one? That's what's confused me a little bit. I get what you mean by that. I agree. If you want to talk who's the more impactful player, but to me, it's almost like it's basically like what people talked about with the whole Device thing in the past, where they didn't want him to be the MVP. It's like if you think about the team, they wouldn't even be in the final. When you talk about the other guy would never have a chance to win an MVP, would he?
Right. Okay. So it's kind of just that. I think where I put it is that overall, Rops is a marginally better player. All right. I don't put him even much higher than Frozen, but it's just a little bit.
Do you hold Frozen in high regard? We should probably state whether that's the case or not. I don't know where you have him.
What do you mean? Where do I have him? Like, I
mean, when you say that, people are going to, if you think Frozen's just an average player, it's not that great a statement, is it? Like, I would say, put it this way, if we were doing that, like, top 20, top 30 thing, if you did another 10 or 15 after the top 20, Frozen would be in that mix, right?
Oh, Frozen's top 25 probably.
Yeah, I think that's fair.
I mean, in terms of
I actually think he's a very good player. Yeah.
In terms of the kind of like more aggressive playmaking riflers, I think he's probably top 10. in that
right.
role.
Okay.
So yeah,
Fair
I think
play.
so I think it's just that, yeah. So
He's better than fucking Rez, that's for sure.
yes,
There you go.
He's smarter than Rez. He's improved more than Rez.
I mean, here's a depressing game if your device. It's called How Many Players in the Current Mouse Sports lineup are better than NIP players? And spoiler, it's way more than device wants to hear about, that's for sure.
where I would basically, I guess, push back on like the public narrative with Rops and versus Frozen a little bit. It's just kind of like, I think people think Rops is leaps and bounds better than him, but I think for one, a lot of the spots and roles that Rops gets to play and the way he gets so many of his stats is like, it's just so much more selfish and doesn't like, because it doesn't have impact in the round or them winning the game. I personally don't count those, like people just look at the numbers and that's where it's just fucked.
Yes,
you know? Because people just look at the numbers and they think, oh, Rops 88 ADR and Frozen 79 ADR, but it's like every time that Frozen got like a 2K, that opened up a huge part of the map that basically won them the round. Whereas Rops gets like a 2K in a 1v4 because the other team got bored. You know, so those kind of moments are where the stats get very skewed, and I think it's a little bit more of me pushing back against what the stats say, more than me actually like trying to say that Frozen's just way better than Rops.
No, I'm with you on that.
I think they're very equal. I think they're actually very equal, and I think it's just like it's a slim margin, but Rops is better at his the value over replacement is kind of how I would see it for Rops in that spot versus Frozen in his spot. Like Rops is better at that lurk spot in regard to the players in the world than Frozen is at his.
The problem I have, go on.
I mean, the other premise is like the roles itself. I would much rather have Rain get 30 kills every game than Nico. If Rain gets 30 kills, we're 90% winning the game.
Yes,
because of where he is and how that makes it easier for everyone else. It doesn't matter if Nico gets some other kill, someone else, like someone's gonna get the rest of the. Like we're probably at that point we're like in a 5v3 pushing in or 4v3, 4v2. We just have to not fuck it up, right? But, you know, it's true that sometimes the players on the sides, it also depends where they play on the CT side. Like, the guy who plays T-Apps on Mirage doesn't always play, like, Connector, which is also a star player role on the CT side. So, like, Rops for a while, like, he played A Anchor, right? And it just plays it passive, like, drops a smoke, falls back. You know, like, it depends how much action you see on the CT side, which also gets in on the kills. So I think for that, right, like, there is a little bit of it being inflated, in a sense, and that's why it's always weird to me when people were surprised. Oh yeah, but when Frozen has a good game, they win. Yeah, it's because of like where he plays. It's like that for every team. If you take those two players and compare it, right? If Bit has 30 kills, right, Navi is probably going to like win the game. He's just killing everyone in like the mid round, the opening of the rounds, right? Like so.
What I would just say, by the way, though, because this is a topic I've had the whole time when I knew Rops was going. The good news is this. We don't have to speculate. We're going to find out this year, because the best news, in my opinion, is this. Rops basically is in the position Frozen was, the other way around. Frozen is in the position Rops was a couple of years ago. Like, it's now his turn to potentially be a player who's way too good for Mouse, but on an okay Mouse squad. Actually, funnily enough, he has a better Mouse squad, I'd argue, than Rops got last year, but he's got some pretty decent pieces around him. So if he hard carries at the end of this year, he'll be in the same spot. He'll get his call up to one of the top teams that needs a big star rifler, and then maybe he becomes a top player. I'm with you. I do think he's next in line. I think he looks like a very good player.
I have to remember another thing, which is also mental. Rops right now, Frozen right now is 19 years old. Like Mouse's best year was 2019. He was 16 at the time. I think he's turning 20 this year, but it doesn't matter. Still, like he's super fucking young, and yes, he's been getting experience and getting better. I think people really underestimate as well. It's not just how better you get as a player, how much experience you get as a player with crowds, with games. It's like how you mature as a human being as well, right? Like how you change the way you, like, you know, conduct yourself and so on. You realize how to be a better teammate, how to get more out of your teammates, like how to really be a leader. That's why I said with that last Mouse lineup, it's like Rops is fucking 21. Like he cannot be a leader of men at, you know, he's your most experienced player. On top of that, he's a quiet guy, like, you know, but no matter who, if you get like a CIS player, right, like still if he's 21, you know, you can see like how awkward it is a little bit in Gambit. For me, that's always their biggest, for me, they need another hype up guy, except for Nafani, right? Like, it just feels so awkward when you watch them play. Like, and he is the in-game leader, so he's like kind of trying to do it. the Hobbit as the oldest guy is one of the quietest, right? So like you need to have that dynamic in your team to really be super successful, right? For Gambit, they have the individuals, they have the Counter-Strike they're playing is solid. That's what they're missing. For some other teams, it's different things, but you can't really neglect that factor when you're talking about like championship winning teams.
This video was kindly supported by Ahmed Hadju, Iskander, Mac Pugnatio Rakula, Travis Goff, Adam Ux, Animosity, Butt Pounder 420, Hades, Jensen Gore, Joseph Ginsberg, Kovacevic, Tobias Bernasconi, Toucan, William Peyton Lacey, Zumba, Zyrathenia, and a special thank you goes out to Jerky's Minion as always. Do you want to suggest a topic or a guest for some of my content? Want to ask me a question in my monthly video AMA? Do you want teasers? Find out who the guests are going to be on my shows. Maybe you want to be part of one of those lengthy but in-depth and interesting discussions about esports with yours truly. Well, if so, put your money where your mouth is and join the Skrilluminati today via the Patreon link in the description box below.